I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Morning everybody, it's 7 o'clock coming up on the programme. For you, a ceasefire begins between Israel and Hezbollah to end fighting in Lebanon.
Plus, a U-turn. Is it coming on electric cars? Downing Street announces an urgent review after sales targets are blamed for the closure of a Vauxhall factory. We'll be
Potential closure, we should say, shouldn't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
We'll see if those jobs are at risk after all. And we'll speak to the government in the next few minutes on that.
And Black Friday or Fraud Day, we'll speak to a consumer champion about whether those discounts are as good as they really seem.
Indeed, so it's Wednesday, the 27th of November. Can you believe it? We're waking up to the first peaceful morning across the Israel-Lebanon border in more than a year. More than 1 million people in Lebanon were forced to flee their homes. Some of them are already on their way home. Also ahead, threats that Vauxhall could potentially close its Luton factory. After 120 years, the industry warns that quotas for electric vehicles are putting jobs on the line. Report on the fight for justice for the children of postmasters wrongfully convicted in the Horizon IT scandal.
I believe that they're responsible for taking away what little time we had left.
The referee at the centre of an FAA betting probe. After allegations, he discussed giving a player a yellow card before the game.
Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
Come on, you're singing along at home. I know you are. Last Christmas turns 40. Can you believe it? We'll speak to the director of the video later this morning and discuss our favourite festive hits. Morning, everybody. At 2 a.m. here in the UK, 4 a.m. in Israel and Lebanon, a ceasefire began between Israel and Hezbollah. As dawn broke, people who have been displaced by months of Israeli attacks were already beginning to return home, despite a warning that it's not yet safe to do so. The deal, which was announced by the US President Joe Biden, is meant to be permanent. Hezbollah is expected to move its forces north of the Litani River. And over the next 60 days, the Israel Defense Forces will withdraw from southern Lebanon. The Lebanese army is expected to deploy 5,000 troops to replace them, policing a buffer zone alongside UN peacekeepers. Alex is standing by for us in Jerusalem this morning. Hello to you, Alex. So, it's happened. Is it holding?
Yeah, it appears to be holding at the moment, and there is optimism, Kay, to think it will continue to hold, although some people here in Israel are sceptical, saying that after 2006, the war there, Hezbollah rearmed and became stronger and more powerful, sitting on Israel's border. But Netanyahu, Prime Minister here, says that won't happen this time. He is reserving the right to hit Hezbollah if they breach the ceasefire agreement. We are already seeing certainly in Lebanon, people starting to return to their homes, people packing up their possessions onto their cars and heading back there. And in Israel, too, people will be wanting to head back. They, of course, have been displaced for more than a year. Clear skies across the Lebanese capital this morning. After months of fighting, Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to a ceasefire. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, addressed the nation after presenting the deal to his cabinet, but warned he'd be quick to act if Hezbollah failed to keep up their side of the bargain.
In full understanding with the United States, we maintain full military freedom of action. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and tries to arm itself, we will attack. If it tries to renew terrorist infrastructure near the border, we will attack.
Just minutes before the ceasefire came into place, Israel launched more airstrikes on Beirut. At least 42 people have been killed in the last 24 hours. In Lebanon, more than 1 million people have been forced from their homes. Some are now returning, but they're making their way back home to devastation. Their villages and towns have been destroyed. It will take years to rebuild.
The cost of this war has been very high. The amount of destruction, the death toll, the total freeze of the economy, and the wave of displaced people in 2006, we have not seen that.
Israel invaded southern Lebanon on the 1st of October this year. Just yesterday, Israeli soldiers crossed the Litani River, many kilometers deep inside the country. Around 60,000 Israelis have been displaced from their homes along the border for more than a year. Many of them don't believe it is safe to return yet and oppose the ceasefire.
Everyone, including myself, are afraid that Hezbollah will recover, are afraid that nobody will implement the agreement except for Israel.
On the streets of Beirut, people celebrated the prospect of peace after months of war. But this is a fragile ceasefire, and by no means the end of the wider conflict across the region. Well, a fragile peace indeed, and under the terms of the agreement, it will last initially for 2 months, 60 days. Israeli forces, we think, will remain inside Lebanon for perhaps a little while, but will, during that time, withdraw. And under the agreement, Hezbollah has to take all of its heavy weapons above the Litani River. Now, what is different to this ceasefire as opposed to the one that ended the war in 2006 under UN Resolution 1701? There'll be an international mediation committee led by the United States. France is also involved, which will monitor any ceasefire violations. We also heard from the Israeli Prime Minister there as well, saying that he reserves the right to strike at Hezbollah if they start to rearm. We should also make it clear as well that although there is a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, the fighting continues in Gaza. The Israelis have delinked those two things. Remember that Hezbollah started firing at Israel on October the 8th after the October the 7th terrorist atrocities, saying it was in solidarity with Hamas and the Palestinians. But there is no ceasefire in Gaza, and the humanitarian situation there remains perilous.
OK, for now, thank you. Back home, Downing Street has announced an urgent review of its plan to boost the number of electric vehicles in the UK after Vauxhall announced that it had plans to close the factory in Luton. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has said he's profoundly concerned about the impact of policies meant to phase out new petrol and diesel vehicles. Around 1,100 jobs are at risk after Stellantis, the owner of Vauxhall, and Citroën confirmed plans to consolidate manufacturing of vans at its Ellesmere port plant in Cheshire. Car makers must build a certain number of electric vehicles each year as a percentage or face heavy fines. This year, the target for cars is 22%, but the forecast is only 19% of sales, which will be all electric. For vans, the target is 10%, with only 6% of sales due to comply.
We believe there's a decision that didn't need to be made and doesn't need to be made. We're a profitable plant. We've been building 500 units a day, and we've got a good workforce. I think we need the government to step in to find what solution can be found for Luton. Otherwise, we're about to lose 120 years of history for the town.
Speaking to Government Minister Stephen Morgan at 7:15 to ask for his view on that and other matters as it relates to the government this morning. Let's talk about a referee. The FA are investigating allegations of potentially issuing or talking about issuing a yellow card even before the game.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a story that is in the Sun newspaper this morning, and at the centre is the Premier League referee David Coote. Now, the FA are investigating betting allegations that in 2019 he, ahead of a match supposedly, discussed giving a Leeds player a yellow card. This is something he did go on to do, although he has told the Sun newspaper he's denied any form of wrongdoing. Now, in a statement, the PGMOL, so they're the body responsible for refereeing games in English football, have said the facts need to be established in light of these very serious allegations. We adopt a zero-tolerance approach to any breach of our integrity code of conduct, which is signed by all match officials on an annual basis. The PGMOL board is committed...
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, is committed to taking the appropriate action should any breach of that code be proven. Now, Coote is already suspended for viral videos that have gone around where he is seen to be insulting the Liverpool manager. Soon after, a video emerged of him, what appears to be him, snorting cocaine. Now, we know that the FA have confirmed that an investigation into his conduct is soon to be underway.
OK, for now, thank you, Sabah. Thank you. Rest of today's top stories morning.
Good morning to you. Let's turn our attention to Egypt, shall we? Because 7 people, including 2 Britons, are still missing from a tourist boat which sank in the Red Sea off the coast of Egypt. 5 more survivors were rescued yesterday. 4 bodies were also recovered. Egyptian military forces, which are coordinating rescue operations, have now rescued 37 of the 44 people on board. Teams say they've been intensifying efforts to find those still missing. The government has announced plans to push ahead with its rollout of free breakfast clubs in England, giving parents 30 minutes of free childcare at the start of the school day. Around 750 state schools with primary-age pupils can now apply to join the early adopter scheme, with the first clubs expected to be running from April. Casinos and betting operators will be forced to pay a levy on their profits under government plans to tackle problem gambling. The levy will bring in £100 million, half of that money going directly to the NHS to fund the treatment and support of people with gambling addictions. And a yellow weather warning for rain has been issued for parts of London and southern England as a new storm batters the UK. Storm Connell will bring up to half a month's worth of rain this morning, risking flooding and threatening power supplies.
The daughter of a post office victim who was investigated while she was terminally ill with cancer says it's time that Fujitsu took responsibility for compensation. Adele Robinson reports.
They still chose to convict a dying woman. They put her on trial internally. Well, you've done wrong, so you're going to pay the consequences, and if you die, so be it.
Katie watched her mum fight terminal cancer and the post office at the same time. Fiona Watson was forced to admit stealing from her branch in 2002. She was innocent and died months after.
We all said goodbye. And watched her go. It was really hard. I mean, what 13-year-old wants to hold their mother as she dies?
And all this time she'd been gone after by the post office up until that point?
Yeah.
Do you think it did contribute towards her health, her declining health?
100%. I believe that they're responsible for taking away what little time we had left. Everything was overshadowed by what had happened. It's like she just gave up.
Sort of reached out and
Katie's part of Lost Chances, a group set up by the children of post office victims. After this,
I think there is a moral obligation for the company to contribute.
a statement on redress from Fujitsu, the company behind Horizon Software, which saw hundreds wrongfully convicted.
I swear by Almighty God.
But despite a meeting with European Director Paul Patterson, over 3 months later, nothing's changed.
We do want to engage in that way. I'm still unclear about what things we can do other than sums of money.
A lawyer for victims says the lack of communication from Fujitsu after giving them hope's unforgivable.
Moral obligation doesn't come with a price. Either you are morally obliged to do something or you're not. And they have not followed through with that moral obligation.
It's not necessarily about redress, say campaigners, but putting right lost opportunity.
We'll never get back what we lost, but I just want them to take ownership.
And waiting on Fujitsu to step up for every victim. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Check out more of Adele's report online, of course, and indeed throughout the day here on Sky News. Quick look at the front pages for you this morning. Where should we start? Let's start with The Guardian, should we? Leading on the US President Joe Biden announcing that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon will come into effect at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's what they say, and that's 2 o'clock this morning. The Financial Times carries a warning from Mexico, from Canada, and from China, outlining damage to the US in the event of Donald Trump's announced tariffs. I lost my faith in the world. The dance class teacher injured while protecting children during the Southport stabbing speaks for the first time on the front of the Metro. The Telegraph reports that the government may water down rules around electrical vehicles following warnings from car makers about the future of the industry. The Daily Mail leads on the same story. Their headline, Labour's net zero electric car plan in chaos. And The Times also features that story, focusing on claims by Vauxhall that electric vehicle targets are to blame? Let's talk about that and other matters with Stephen Morgan, Minister for Early Education. We'll get to breakfast clubs, but let's start with what's on the front pages of many of the papers this morning. We believe that Johnny Reynolds the Business Secretary, has announced an urgent review of the electric vehicle policy of this government. What more can you tell me?
Well, the Business Secretary will be making a statement in the House later today.
Really?
Obviously, this is a commercial decision for the company, but I know that the Business Secretary has been working closely with industry to bring stability and consistency to our approach. Obviously, we set out our plans in the manifesto. We provided more funding in the budget for this priority, but we will work really closely with industry on next steps.
The policy, the industry says at this stage, is going to cost them £6 billion this year. In addition to that, potentially 1,100 jobs at Vauxhall, certainly 800 jobs with Ford. The transition cannot happen as quickly as you want it to, can it?
Well, we're going to work really closely with industry, Kay, to make sure that this is rolled out effectively. There will be a consultation, which I know the Business Secretary will be setting out in due course, and there will be a statement in the House later today. OK,
well, let me put it another way. Can you say that phasing out new cars being powered solely by internal combustion engine will be totally a thing of the past by 2035? Is that a realistic claim?
That's the ambition of this government, and that's what obviously we set out in terms of our plans at the election. But I know that the Business Secretary and others in government are working closely with industry to make sure we deliver on those ambitions, to hear concerns from the industry, to make sure that we...
Why only now? These plants are closing.
Well, we're working really closely with the sector. There is the consultation on its way as well, and obviously Rachel Reeves at Budget announced additional funding to support EV charging points and also that shift to electric vehicles for vans.
I mean, it's madness that companies in the UK are having to buy electric vehicle credits from countries like China and the United States, direct competition for these companies, in order to try to meet these unrealistic targets.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and you know it's really important that there is the infrastructure up and down the country. In my own constituency, half of the charging points currently aren't working. So there is a journey that we need to take. Absolutely right, and I've been calling out the council for that, and it's absolutely right that we've got the right infrastructure in place to make this a suitable journey and an easier journey for motorists to move towards.
What about if people don't want these cars?
Well, we've set out the ambition. We obviously need to take consumers with us, and I know that Johnny Reynolds will do a good job on this work, and he will obviously set out more detail on this later in the House.
Today?
Today.
And you don't think it's too late? You should have done this earlier.
Well, he's working really closely with industry already. I know he's regularly meeting with industry partners.
OK. Tell me about breakfast clubs and what you want to roll out.
Well, we're determined to break the link between background and opportunity. And breakfast clubs, we know, will make such a big difference to children's lives. They will get children ready to learn at the start of the school day, and they also improve behaviour, attendance and attainment. And I'm really excited to be rolling this out today, announcing that schools could be part of an early adopter scheme ahead of our plans to introduce breakfast clubs in every primary school across the country.
How much is it going to cost?
So we've announced a tripling of funding in the budget to over 33 million.
Is that enough?
There are different models up and down the country, and that's why this early adopter approach will look at what makes the biggest impact and want to work really closely with schools to make sure that it's a brilliant offer across every part of the country.
OK. Prime Minister has been quoted as saying yesterday that Britain isn't working. Do you agree with him?
Well, we want to grow the economy and we want to make sure that people are working. And obviously what the Prime Minister said...
They're not, though, are they?
Well,
9 million people economically inactive.
Well, we've got lots of people that are long-term unemployed, and that's why our ambitious plans to support people back to work, to grow the economy, I think will make a real difference. And the Youth Guarantee programme, which will support young people into work, I think is a really important programme, which will hopefully make a difference.
We're also sick note Britain, aren't we? Spending on sickness benefits could well reach £100 billion a year by the end of this Parliament. What are we doing as a country so wrong that people would rather get a sick note than go to work?
Well, we need to raise aspirations across our country.
How do we do that?
Well, we're reviewing the curriculum and assessment system in the school system. We want to make sure that young people leave school and college ready for work and ready for life, building their confidence and resilience. We want to make sure there's good enrichment opportunities for children and young people. And obviously one of our commitments is to introduce work experience for young people so they've got those confidence and resilience skills to support them as they go into employment.
A lot of them have also got mental health challenges, and there's a lot, we're told, of self-diagnosed mental health problems. Do you acknowledge and accept that, or are you more with Mel Stride for the government, for the for the opposition? Thank you, who says actually it's not a mental health challenge. A lot of these people are just a bit, in his words, bluesy.
Well, well-being and mental health is a huge issue that parents raise with me when I visit schools and colleges, and that's why we're committed to access to a dedicated mental health professional in every school. We want to make sure that every child and young person succeeds and thrives, and that by doing that investment in schools, I think that will make a real difference to support young people through their life.
Yeah, but do you acknowledge that self-diagnosed mental health is not always, we can't always take it at face value?
I mean, our priority is to make sure we support young people with the skills that they need to get the jobs for the future, and obviously our youth guarantee will help achieve that.
No, your job as a government is to get people into work, surely?
Yeah, and through the youth guarantee that was announced earlier this week, hopefully we will help achieve that.
Okay, what are your thoughts on assisted dying? It's a tricky one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's a hugely emotive issue, and obviously there's views on both sides that are strongly held views. Obviously it's a free vote on Friday, and it's really important that people listen to what their constituents have to say, and as it's a matter of conscience, they make a decision on what they believe is the right thing to do.
And where are you?
So my constituents will know that I will be voting in favour of the legislation on Friday.
Why?
Because it's, I believe, the right thing to do based on the feedback that I've heard from my constituents on this highly emotive issue.
We were looking at a poll on the programme yesterday, I think 5,000 people, so it was a significant poll. Only 11%, once they were explained to them exactly what the bill would mean, were in favour or in support of it. There is a suggestion that there hasn't been enough time to debate it, so people don't know potentially what you're voting for.
Well, I think it's for MPs to make a decision on what they want to do. It's a matter of conscience. It's not for me to influence how they vote. They need to look at the information, they need to look at the evidence and make a decision based on that information.
And do you think, in your opinion, that religion should play a factor in how MPs decide to vote on this?
This is a free vote, Kay, and I think it's absolutely right that people make a decision based on what their constituents share with them, and ultimately they're held accountable for that decision on how they vote.
But should religion play a part in that
I'm not going to get
decision
into that. I don't want to influence how other people are going to vote on Friday. I've made my mind up, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Do you think it will pass?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's a free vote, and I know that Parliament.
I'm sure that in the tea
respect.
rooms, lots of people are talking about it, though, aren't they? I mean, what are you feeling? What's your view on how it's going?
My focus is on responding to what my constituents tell me and the decisions that I will make on Friday.
Okay, it's good to see you as
Thank
always.
you.
Thanks very much indeed for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to join us. We appreciate it. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. After months of fighting, Israel and Hezbollah agree to a ceasefire. We'll get reaction from the former Middle East Minister Alistair Burt coming up. As Egypt intensifies its search for 7 people still missing from a tourist boat which sank in the Red Sea, we'll get the thoughts of a marine investigator.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
Never gets old, does it? Actually, it does. It's 40 years old. We'll be speaking to the chap behind that video coming up.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Drangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. So, Johnny Reynolds, the business secretary, is going to be making a statement about the story that's on most of the front pages this morning.
Yes, he is, Kay. So, Stephen Morgan, that minister who was just on the programme with you, talking about how the business secretary, Johnny Reynolds, is going to be making that statement in the House. I think realistically it's going to be there to reassure some of those MPs, especially those of whom have constituents who are potentially at risk by possible job losses. And really, he's going to be trying to find a way to talk to the manufacturing businesses that are affected by these electric vehicles rules. And basically, these rules are all about trying to get to a point where they phase out petrol and diesel cars. So improving, a kind of net zero targets, I suppose. But the difficulty is that what manufacturers are saying is it's too fast, it's too soon, it's too steep. So these targets are supposed to be going up every single year until 2030.
2035, I think.
Well, 2035, yeah, but there's a 2030 target of 80% for cars. And so what they're saying is it's not realistic, and there isn't the demand from consumers who actually don't want these cars as much as perhaps they thought. That's why we saw
they're
those
really
job losses
expensive
in
as
Ford.
well.
Well, this is the thing, they're expensive, and also people always hear horror stories about, not being able to find a charger or the charger stopped working.
The minister accepted that, didn't he?
Exactly.
Totally safe.
And so it's a bit of a messy situation now, where we saw the Tories, when Kemi Badenoch was the business secretary, have to U-turn on this.
Yeah.
So the expectation is now, what are they going to do? Are they going to change some of the kind of systems around the credits that you can buy? So essentially, manufacturers can buy credits from their competitors to avoid these fines of not meeting these targets, which the minister also admitted was slightly crazy, to have British companies buying credits, paying essentially foreign companies not to get these fines from the British government. Also, there's another way you can kind of try and deal with it, which is basically you borrow from yourself in the future, and you just assume that you're going to have even better numbers in the future, and you can kind of take that, as it were, on a metaphorical credit card. Again, that only works if you are sure you can beat those targets in the future. And so I think the minister was really quite open and candid about the fact that actually this is not working, something is going to have to be done. So the question is, what kind of a tweaks do we see from the government
to reassure manufacturers.
We'll hear from Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary, in the House of Commons later on today. When you came in today, you had one of these on your desk.
I did.
And this is Rod Stewart. This is because you were talking about Rod Stewart yesterday, and I had a look what was on the back of it. And Pennies from Heaven is my favourite.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains the pennies from heaven? You'll find your...
So have you changed your mind on how he sounds now?
I think he sounds great.
Well...
U-turn.
Yeah.
What do you mean, you
Yesterday you were talking about his voice, and it's not just us
That wasn't
saying
me.
it. That was you.
Wasn't? I didn't say anything about his voice yesterday.
Okay, well, should I tell you what one of our viewers has said this morning?
Go on.
Dear Kay, my dear Kay, I watch you every day along with millions of others. I'm a big fan. 4 albums for you and your crew as a way of thanking everybody for a lovely Glastonbury announcement this morning. One of your crew doubted the ability of us older vocalists to tell her to take a listen and get back to me. With respect, Sir Rod, kiss, kiss.
That was about Dolly Parton miming. I wasn't talking about Rod Stewart.
She's backtracking now, Rod. Trying to say good morning to him, tell him how good he sounds.
Good morning, you sound fantastic. Of course you sound fantastic. All I was saying was, I was trying to be sympathetic to Dolly Parton and saying maybe she was having a tough time, and now I seem to be getting attacked for trying to be nice to Dolly Parton.
He said with respect.
You did say with respect.
Signed, Sir
With
Rod.
respect, Rod, you sound fantastic.
Yeah. Sir Rod Stew. Thanks very much, Mary. Rest of today's top stories.
Yeah, let's bring in the headlines today, shall we? A ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah has begun. The deal came into effect at 4 a.m. local time in Lebanon after being approved by Israel's Security Cabinet last night. The government has announced an urgent review of its policy on electric cars after the industry blamed sales quotas for Vauxhall's proposed decision to close its Luton factory. The government minister, Stephen Morgan, told us a few moments ago that his colleague Jonathan Reynolds would make a statement to MPs with more details about that review later today. The FA are investigating allegations that the referee David Coote discussed giving a yellow card before a match. He's already suspended over allegations of a rant against the then Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp. And the daughter of a post office victim who was investigated while she was terminally ill with cancer says it's time Fujitsu took responsibility for compensation. A campaign group wants the company to offer financial redress and to help establish a family fund.
Let's take you back to our top story today. A ceasefire has begun between Israel and Hezbollah. Latest on that, Alistair Burt is a former foreign minister for the Middle East, to be precise. He's joining us now. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Nice to see you again, Kay.
You too, sir. Talk to me about this ceasefire. Are you surprised that it's coming into effect? Do you think it will pass the test of time?
It may well do. Insofar as it goes, it's got to be good news for those who have been displaced, firstly by the constant rocket fire from Hezbollah into northern Israel, and then the reprisals by Israel in dealing with the leadership of Hezbollah through the bombardment which we've seen, which of course has also killed many innocent civilians as consequential damage. Anything that stops that sort of conflict has got to be good. But the aims of Israel in Lebanon are very different to the aims in Gaza, and whether or not a peace deal gives a sense that peace is possible and therefore improves the opportunity of negotiations with Hamas in Gaza, that's rather more difficult. But there's no reason why it shouldn't stick. Hezbollah is significantly weakened by what has happened. It's in no position to attack Israel. Israel has made it very clear that any attacks upon it will be met with further action by it. So it's not in Hezbollah's interest to continue this conflict, and it should now give space for the politicians to get to work.
Why do you think there was a time limit put on it to start with, 60 days at this stage?
I think that provides some reassurance and some time frame. Of course, it takes us into a new US presidency, so it may have something to do with that. President-elect Trump has already made it clear that he wants to see conflict in the region come to an end. Easier said than done. But Prime Minister Netanyahu will want President-elect Trump's support for other action which it is taking. So maybe if it can bring this conflict to an end, then that will help in the relationship it's going to need with the United States in the future.
Would you expect the Lebanese army to take a more active role now in the demilitarised zone, if we can call it that?
Well, it's a good question. Up until now, the situation diplomatically was clear in that UN Resolution 1701 should have pushed Hezbollah back to a location north of Litani River, should have stopped the attacks from Hezbollah into northern Israel. And the Lebanese army and the United Nations should have been joint guarantors of that. The Lebanese army's relationship with Hezbollah has always been one of significant difficulty. Hezbollah has been much better armed by the Iranians. It's not been possible for the Lebanese army, that is a unifying force in Lebanon. It is not seen as sectarian. It was seen as defending the borders of Lebanon, particularly against Syria when that conflict started and kept Lebanon out of that civil war. And the United Kingdom has worked closely with the Lebanese army to help supply it and also make sure it could do its job. But it always had difficulty in dealing with the armaments of Hezbollah. Whether or not now the political situation is different, Hezbollah knowing that should it attack Israel further, there will be reprisals against it, may make the situation of the Lebanese army better, and maybe the Lebanese army can do what it really should do and act as the armed force in Lebanon to protect the Lebanese people, because that has not been the case up to now.
And eyes cast now to Gaza. Any thoughts on whether this could have ramifications for the situation in Gaza?
I think we should be very cautious of believing there is an easy spread of one to the other. Israel's objectives in Lebanon were more limited than what has happened in Gaza. Lebanon is sovereign Lebanese territory. Israel can withdraw. It leaves the territory to Lebanon. There is no agreement about the future status of Gaza. Gaza is currently occupied Palestinian territory. There's been no decision as to whether Israel will leave it, whether it will seek to reoccupy it, whether another force will go in to keep order. And until those political questions are dealt with, it's very difficult to see an end to the conflict. Hamas goes on. The hostages remain, which is an outrage. They should be returned. And there should be an effort to come to some sort of negotiated future. But almost inevitably, this will involve the future of Palestine and a potential Palestinian state, which Prime Minister Netanyahu's government seems absolutely pledged against. Until the Palestinian political issue is dealt with, it's very hard to see that there will be an ultimate resolution to the conflict, which is just misery for all those who have been affected, both in southern Israel after the outrage of October the 7th and those who were displaced by the conflict since.
OK, for now, thank you.
Thank you.
Two British nationals still believed to be missing after a tourist boat sank off the coast of Egypt on Monday. 5 people were rescued yesterday, while 4 more bodies were recovered within the hull of the boat in the Red Sea. Simon Boxall, who's an oceanographer at the University of Southampton, with us again today, offering his expertise yesterday. Let's talk about those that have been rescued and recovered. First of all, Simon, if I may, all in the boat, some of them in an air pocket, some of them not. Is it simply just the luck of the draw when it comes to air pockets?
It is, and I think there's 2 things here. There's the occurrence of air pockets, and 24 hours isn't long, 36 hours isn't too long for an air pocket to maintain life. But also it's the temperatures. The temperatures at the moment in that part of the Red Sea are about 28 degrees Celsius. That's the sort of standard indoor swimming pool temperature. And so people can survive quite long periods in those sorts of waters. So a combination of air pockets and those warm waters means the chance of survival are quite high. And this is why it's really important, particularly in this case, to keep that search going for survivors. And I think, it's tragic we've had 4 confirmed deaths so far, but there is still hope for those people still missing.
We talked yesterday about what were the potential probable causes of what happened. 24 hours on, is it any clearer?
No, we're getting the same story coming out, mainly from the governor for the region, saying a huge wave hit the ship. There's no evidence of that. The Egyptian Met Office did issue storm warnings, but that was for the Red Sea and the Mediterranean generally. And when I looked at the actual real weather for that region, the airport at Mar Salam, the actual wind conditions weren't that strong. You know, it built up to about a force 5. That wouldn't create these sort of alleged 3 to 4 meter waves. I still feel that this is probably not a wave that caused the capsize. We need to see an investigation come out of this. It's still early days, but the information coming out from the Egyptian authorities is still very sparse. If you compare this to the information that was released with the Bayesian sinking off the Sicilian coast earlier in the year, the information we're getting is very, very limited. We don't know where the vessel is. We don't know, is it sunk? What depth of water is it in? And, you know, the information is being filtered by the Egyptian authorities. There's been no direct statements from people from the boat itself. It's all been sort of through the authorities.
And we talked yesterday about the fact that there isn't a black box on this sort of vessel and whether we will ever truly know what happened.
I suspect we won't. It depends on whether we don't even know, you know, was the vessel at anchor? Was it in transit? Was it moving through the water? None of this information is available. If it was moving, even if it was at anchor, there should be a watch person on the bridge. Certainly if it's moving, I would hope there'd be a watch person. They will know what happened if they survived. And really it's their information that's going to be important. The big problem is if there was an error somewhere, you know, was the boat unstable? Did they do a very sharp U-turn, which would feel like a wave had hit the boat if it capsized? You know, there are so many questions. And I think, you know, time will tell what happened, we hope. But at the moment, the focus is on trying to find any remaining survivors.
And Simon, why do we continue to see disasters in the Red Sea?
It's a tricky one. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that the density of vessels in the Red Sea is very high, first of all. And so it's a bit like sort of, you know, a country with lots of cars will see more accidents than a country without those cars. But it is also about regulations and enforcing those regulations. Now, Egypt does have very good maritime regulations. It's got a good maritime history. It's a question of how well are those regulations enforced. We know that the Sea Story had a safety certificate from March, but a lot happens between, you know, beginning of the year and the end of the year. And we don't know how it was loaded. We don't know what the crew conditions were like. There are so many questions. Everything is speculation at this stage.
OK, Simon, thank you for taking the time. Again, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Black Friday just 2 days away. We'll be asking a consumer expert if there really are any bargains to be had, or is it just a con?
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Maitai village on the front line.
Firing to civilians and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Want to update you on the ceasefire that was in place 2 o'clock this morning, London time, between Hezbollah and Israel. We've got a statement translated from Hebrew from the Israeli Defense Force saying, under the guidance of the political echelon, as of this morning, the ceasefire agreement in Lebanon came into effect and the IDF is operating accordingly. In the past hour, IDF forces identified several vehicles in Lebanese territory with suspects in a restricted movement area. The forces fired to prevent their approach to the area and the suspects retreated. The Air Force is prepared to operate across all of Lebanon and the air defence array is on high alert. As of now, there is no changes to the Home Front Command's instructions. The IDF will act against anyone attempting to violate the ceasefire agreement and will not allow any harm to the security of Israeli residents. In other words, they are abiding by the ceasefire, but they have put a shot across the bows, they say, from a vehicle or vehicles, suspects that were in an area that is restricted, and they, according to the IDF, withdrew. Keep an eye on that and update you as and when we can. Meantime, let's talk about Black Friday, which is on Friday, this Friday coming. It seems like it's a whole month of Black Friday, doesn't it? Helen Dewdney is here, consumer champion. Is it all it's cracked up to be?
I think we can probably say no. You have to have your wits about you. The latest Which research showed that from Black Friday last year, that 9 out of 10 Black Friday bargains were actually cheaper or the same price at more than one time in the year.
So what do you do? How do you find out?
Well, there's a few things that you can do. So you can use sites like Price Runner, the Google shopping tool, and compare prices. Just because something's discounted doesn't mean to say it's going to be the cheapest place you can get it. So, and you can use Camel if you're looking at Amazon, and that will give you the history of prices. So you can see whether you're getting that really good bargain or not really. And keep your wits about you. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, because that's what retailers want you to think. Oh, it's a bargain, and I'm going to go.
What about the big retailers? If I'm thinking about the big department stores. If they're saying their Black Friday sales and they're knocking 20-25% off, can we trust them?
No more or less than any others. I think that's when you have got to do the research and see if it is cheaper somewhere else. Places like Boots, for example, are pretty good on their own branded stuff, but other branded stuff, not so much. So you do have to keep doing that research.
How important is Black Friday for retailers? I mean, it used to be Boxing Day, didn't it, when the sales started?
I think they just plan it into their whole scheme of things, so it might well be stock that they can't get rid of. And you're seeing Black Friday, it starts in November. We're seeing, the 1st of November. We're seeing stuff that it's a week and they're putting stuff constantly on. So I think it is just part and parcel of a retailer's plan, their business plan, really, that these are the sales that they put on. And the fact that it lasts more than a day.
So they're emptying the storerooms in order to get the Christmas kit in?
Yeah, because I think also, particularly when you're buying tech, is to make sure that you're actually buying the latest model, because they could be getting rid of old stock. So
I was going to ask you about, because that's Cyber Monday, which is a completely different thing. There is tech for Black Friday, but then we move into Cyber Monday. Is that a better deal?
Not necessarily. It's all mashed into one. We're seeing, it might as well be discount November, really, because you're seeing so much come through all the time. But, it is checking that you've got the latest model, that, if it needs batteries, don't necessarily get batteries from the same place. It could be cheaper to get batteries from somewhere else. They're going to put the add-ons in there.
Yeah, so you talked about the price tracking tool, Camel. I've never heard of that before, so I just tap that into
if you go to Camel, and then you put in your products that you are looking at on Amazon, and that will tell you whether it's been, £5.50 or £500 in the last 5 years.
OK, there must be some bargains to be had.
There are. In the if you look at the research, it's 1 to 10, but you do have to put that time in to look at whether it's there or not, and making sure that you're not getting scammed, that you are looking at the retailers that are real and not buying stuff on social media.
And those prices do have to have been at that point for a certain period of time, don't they?
No, that rule changed a few years ago.
Oh,
it had to be a set time. It used to be a set sort of 30 days. It has got to have been cheaper at some point, but there's no sort of set limit. It's like a reasonable sort of length of time. So it could be that it was for a few days, 2 months ago. So it isn't as strict as it used to be, that.
So what do you do on Black Friday, or for Black Friday month, as you put it? Do you have a look, and do you ever buy stuff in November, or do you wait? Do you get better deals in the Boxing Day sales?
I think
a bit late for Christmas then, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the best advice for people really is to have a list of what it is that you want, so you don't get sucked into that sort of looks like a bargain. I'll get that as a present for somebody, and they don't like it, or I'm going to use that and you never use it. So it's to have that list that you want, and then when you're looking, you're more likely to be able to use it. So I do use it, but in the same way that I do in any other year, that you've got discounts as to whether it's real or not.
And what are the rules if you buy something as part of Black Friday, and then you give it to somebody on Christmas Day and they don't like it? Can they still change it, or is that too late?
Well, it's when you buy something online, you have got 28 days to change your mind. You've got 14 days to say, I don't like this, or it doesn't fit, and to send it back, and then another 14 days in which to take it back. But it's between you and the retailer that transaction has happened. So somebody else can't do that unless they've got the proof of purchase.
Yeah, but I'm making the calculation, and from Black Friday, or this week, to Christmas Day, it's more than 28 days, so you can't take it back?
No, but some that 14 days is for only online. In store, you don't have that change of mind anyway. But some retailers will do that. Some retailers will extend the receipt, whether it's Black Friday or not. So it's worth looking. Particularly the big retailers will give an extended 30-day, 60-day exchange that you can take it back after Christmas.
Yeah, I got caught out with Black Friday last year. I bought loads of chocolate for Christmas, and then when it came, the sell-by date was the 20th of December. Come on. I know, right? Yeah. We won't name who it was, but you know who you are. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. What about this song?
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the
We're going to be chatting to Andrew Morahan, director of that video that he made 40 years ago in the 9 o'clock hour. It's only ever been the Christmas #1 once, and that was quite recently.
That's insane.
Isn't it?
That's insane.
Yeah, or the year before, I can't remember now. But
It was #2 quite often, but never made it to #1.
Because of Band-Aid. We've been talking about Christmas songs. What's your favourite Christmas song?
Whitney Houston.
Which one?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. Have we got that? Let's listen.
Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel.
Oh, that's lovely.
I've never heard this before.
Beautiful. Whitney is the queen of Christmas. She knows what she's doing.
I've not heard this song before. This is the first time I'm hearing it.
Points to Murray for bringing this to the...
Well, do you know what? When it comes to Christmas songs, I don't have a specific favourite, but anything that Michael Bublé touches is an instant fan favourite of mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, Michael Bublé songs, I would say. What about you, Kay?
Santa Baby.
Oh,
Nice.
a classic.
Yeah.
Santa baby, just slip a sable under the tree for me. Been an awful good girl, Santa baby, so hurry down the chimney tonight.
Love Eartha Kitt. I mean, come on, amazing. Yours is ridiculous.
Gear change. Cue the music. Cue the music. Fairy Tale of New York. It's grungy, it's different, it's not so cutesy as all the other Christmas tunes. We have enough of them every rest of the time. You want a little bit of a gut punch.
We had to cut round it so that we could play it in the morning.
Yeah, especially for me, there's one word that I shouldn't be a fan of.
We're back in just a second. All today's top stories, stay tuned.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock. Coming up on the programme for you, a ceasefire begins between Israel and Hezbollah to end fighting in Lebanon.
Plus, is a U-turn coming on electric cars? Downing Street announces an urgent review after sales targets are blamed for the closure of a Vauxhall factory, and we'll be speaking to the Shadow Chancellor in the next few minutes on that.
And what role should religion play in politics? We'll be speaking to Jonathan Atkin, a former minister who went to jail and is now a priest and a columnist. Yasmin Brown.
Yeah, we will. It's Wednesday, the 27th of November. We're waking up to the first peaceful morning across the...
We're waking up to the first peaceful morning across the Israel-Lebanon border in more than a year as a delicate ceasefire takes effect.
That's what I was going to say. More than 1 million people in Lebanon were forced to flee their homes. Some of them are already on their way back. Also ahead, Vauxhall plans to close its Luton factory after 120 years, blaming rules on electric vehicles. The government minister agrees that change is needed.
In my own constituency, half of the charging points currently aren't working. So there is a journey that we need to take. Absolutely right, and I've been calling out the council for that.
We report on the fight for justice for the children of postmasters wrongfully convicted in the Horizon IT scandal. The referee at the centre of an FA betting probe after allegations he discussed giving a player a yellow card before the match.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
And Last Christmas turns 40. We'll speak to the director of the video later this morning and discuss our favourite festive hits. Morning, 2 a.m. here in the UK, 4 a.m. in Israel and Lebanon. A ceasefire began between Israel and Hezbollah. As dawn broke, people who have been displaced by months of Israeli attacks were already beginning to return home, despite a warning that it's not yet safe for them to do so. And the IDF said in the last hour that it had fired on vehicles entering a restricted area, which then retreated. The deal, which was announced by the US President Joe Biden, is meant to be permanent. Hezbollah is expected to move its forces north of the Litani River. And over the next 60 days, the Israel Defense Forces will withdraw from southern Lebanon. The Lebanese army is expected to deploy 5,000 troops to replace them, policing a buffer zone alongside UN peacekeepers. Let's get more, should we? Alex is in Jerusalem for us this morning. We're already hearing from the IDF that they have fired warning shots and the ceasefire is just a few hours old, but it does generally look as though it's holding.
Yeah, good morning, Kay. It does appear to be holding, and there is reason really for optimism that it will continue to hold, not least of all because Hezbollah as a fighting force has been pretty much decimated, particularly over the last few months since Israel launched its offensive into Lebanon. Its stockpiles of weapons have been degraded, and much of its leadership, including its leader Hassan Nasrallah, has been eliminated. And from Israel's point of view, they also say that they want to now focus very much on Iran. They also want to get the tens of thousands of people who've been displaced by the fighting back to their homes in the northern communities. But to give you an idea of just how delicate it is, we've heard from the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, in the last few minutes, saying that they have opened fire on a suspect vehicle moving into a restricted zone. So it gives you an idea of just how shaky that ceasefire is, but it does appear to be holding for the moment. Clear skies across the Lebanese capital this morning. After months of fighting, Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to a ceasefire. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation after presenting the deal to his cabinet, but warned he'd be quick to act if Hezbollah failed to keep up their side of the bargain.
In full understanding with the United States, we maintain full military freedom of action. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and tries to arm itself, we will attack. If it tries to renew terrorist infrastructure near the border, we will attack.
Just minutes before the ceasefire came into place, Israel launched more airstrikes on Beirut. At least 42 people have been killed in the last 24 hours. In Lebanon, more than 1 million people have been forced from their homes. Some are now returning, but they're making their way back home to devastation. Their villages and towns have been destroyed. It will take years to rebuild.
The cost of this war has been very high.
the amount of destruction, the death toll, the total freeze of the economy, and the wave of displaced people in 2006, we have not seen that.
Israel invaded southern Lebanon on the 1st of October this year. Just yesterday, Israeli soldiers crossed the Litani River, many kilometers deep inside the country. Around 60,000 Israelis have been displaced from their homes along the border for more than a year. Many of them don't believe it is safe to return yet and oppose the ceasefire.
Everyone, including myself, are afraid that Hezbollah will recover, are afraid that nobody will implement the agreement except for Israel.
On the streets of Beirut, people celebrated the prospect of peace after months of war. But this is a fragile ceasefire, and by no means the end of the wider conflict across the region. So a fragile peace indeed. And that question really, Kay, about implementation really looms over all of this. There will be people pointing to what happened in 2006 when the war with Hezbollah ended then. And the agreement was very similar to what we're seeing now, encapsulated in UN Resolution 1701. And essentially it is the same, albeit with a few tweaks. This time there will be an international mediation group led by the United States that will monitor any kind of ceasefire violations. Israel is also saying, we heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night, saying that it will react forcefully. It reserves the right to continue striking Hezbollah if it sees any breaches in the agreement. The other thing, of course, to point out in terms of the wider peace in the region is that the fighting in Gaza is continuing. That does not come under this ceasefire at all. It will be a separate agreement when and if it does come, and the humanitarian situation there obviously remains extremely grim.
Indeed. So, Alex Vanai, thanks very much. Thank you. Mari's here to talk to us about Downing Street announcing an urgent review of its policy to boost the number of electric vehicles in the UK after Vauxhall announced plans to close its factory in Luton. Speaking to me in the last hour, Government Minister Stephen Morgan said there would be a statement to MPs from the Business Secretary later on today and agreed that things had to change.
You know, it's really important that there is the infrastructure up and down the country. In my own constituency, half of the charging points currently aren't working. So there is a journey that we need to take. Absolutely right. And I've been calling out the council for that. And it's absolutely right that we've got the right infrastructure in place to make this suitable journey and an easier journey for motorists to move towards.
What about if people don't want these cars?
Well, we've set out the ambition. We obviously need to take consumers with us, and I know that Johnny Reynolds will do a good job on this work, and he will obviously set out more detail on this later in the House.
Today?
Today.
Which wasn't planned, so we're going to call it an emergency statement, and they're doing that because Vauxhall and previously Ford are not happy at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you hit it on the head with that question at the end of that clip there, where you said, what if people don't want these cars? And the Vauxhall announcement that came yesterday has been directly linked. They've said it's in part because there isn't the demand. There isn't a high enough demand for electric cars. And so that's what we saw blamed for the Ford closures as well, 800 jobs. And that's what we're seeing for Vauxhall now as well. There's also talk around Sunderland and a Nissan plant up there as well. So there's a lot of nervousness around this electric vehicle mandate, really, and the fact that a lot of these industries are saying that, first of all, the demand isn't there, but second of all, these targets are just too steep, too quickly, and it's not able, as an industry, to kind of keep up with that.
Just looking at those numbers, actually, while we're chatting about it, Mary, 22% of cars, 10% of vans this year is what it should be, 28% next year, and then by 2035, 100%.
Yeah.
But people don't seem to want these vehicles, not least because there's no infrastructure in place to speak of.
Well, this is the thing, and the infrastructure has to go hand in hand, because until people feel confident that they are not going to either get to a place and not find a charger, or find that all the chargers are either taken or not working, people are not going to want to feel like they're taking a chance on an electric car, and so they need to get that right. Now, government would say they've only been in power for 6 months, but nonetheless, this deadline is coming in January, and those businesses need need certainty. Johnny Reynolds last night was talking to a part of the sector, and he was saying, I understand you need clarity before January because you need to kind of have that to make those kinds of decisions about jobs, about investment and production lines. And what he's saying is, therefore, they're having this review, but they are fast-tracking this review, this consultation with business to try and get that, get answers really, presumably ahead of that January deadline. So the real question is, what is the government going to do? Are they going to postpone the targets, scrap the targets? Are they going to tweak the system around credits and whether you can buy credits from rivals, which the minister was saying to you is a bit of a mad solution, or potentially buying yourself credits for your future self in the hope that you do better in the future. There are different ways they can do this, so it'll be interesting to see what the business secretary says in the House today. But clearly the government isn't shying away from the fact that something needs to be done very quickly if they are going to save those jobs.
Anecdotally, my daughter-in-law has an electric vehicle, and she doesn't want to use it at Christmas to go and see her parents because they live 100 or so miles away, and she's worried that if it's snowing, what does that do to the battery? Will she be able to find somewhere to charge on the way? Got to fix the infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a family member had an electric car, and they ended up getting rid of it because it was so stressful not being able to find a charger in time that they said they just couldn't cope with the stress of it, especially on long journeys.
Unfortunately, I do that with petrol. But there we go, that's a different story. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Speaking to the shadow chancellor, Mel Stride, in just a few moments here on Sky. And obviously he will be talking about that. And he's also come up with a comment about people who are being challenged as far as their mental health concerns. Are they just being a bit too bluesy? We'll put that to him as well in just a few moments' time. Before that, though, what's going on with the FA and this referee? He's in the headlines a lot at the moment.
He is. He's in the headlines of the Sun newspaper in particular today. Some very serious allegations, and at the centre of them is David Coote. He's a Premier League referee. Now, he's in hot water once again, and the FA are investigating betting allegations that in 2019, ahead of a match, Coote allegedly discussed giving a Leeds player in October 2019 the yellow card. Now, this is something he did actually go on to do during the match, although he has told the Sun newspaper that he denies wholeheartedly any form of wrongdoing. Now, in a statement, the PGMOL, they're the body responsible for refereeing games in English football, have said the facts need to be established in light of these very serious allegations. We adopt a zero-tolerance approach to any breach of our integrity code of conduct, which is signed by all match officials on an annual basis. They go on to say that their board is committed to taking the appropriate action should any breach of that code be proven. Now, as I mentioned, he is in hot water at the moment. He's already suspended Coote, and that's because of comments that he made about Liverpool's former manager, Jurgen Klopp. And soon afterwards, a video emerged of him in what appears to be Coote consuming drugs. Now, the FA have said that a separate investigation into his conduct is soon to be underway.
OK, we'll keep an eye on that one, won't we? Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Top stories.
Yes, let's turn our attention to Egypt, because 7 people, including 2 Britons, still missing from a tourist boat which sank in the Red Sea off the coast of Egypt. 5 more survivors were rescued yesterday and 4 bodies recovered. Egyptian military forces, which are coordinating rescue operations, have now rescued 37 of 44 people who were on board. Teams say they have been intensifying efforts to find those still missing. The government has announced plans to push ahead with its rollout of free breakfast clubs in England, giving parents 30 minutes of free childcare at the start of the school day. Around 750 state schools with primary-aged pupils can now apply to join the early adopter scheme, with the first clubs expected to be running from April. Casinos and betting operators will be forced to pay a levy on their profits under government plans to tackle problem gambling. The levy will bring in £100 million, with half of the money going directly to the NHS to fund the treatment and support of people with gambling addictions. And a yellow weather warning for rain's been issued for parts of London and southern England as a new storm batters the UK. Storm Connell will bring up to half a month's worth of rain this morning, risking flooding and threatening power supplies.
I put one of these on your desk this morning, didn't I?
It's a rod.
Yeah, was there a particular tune that you liked?
Ooh,
Go with Pennies from Heaven. Thank
yeah,
you.
I thought so.
Here we go.
Because it's links to the
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains the pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling.
On the side, the indomitable Jules Holland as well.
Exactly, I love that. Anyway, I told you in the last hour who they came from. There was a little note. It says, "My dear Kay, I watch you every day, along with millions of others. I'm a big fan. 4 albums for you and your crew as a way of thanking everybody for a lovely Glastonbury announcement this morning. One of your crew doubted the ability of us older vocalists. Tell her to take a listen and get back to me with respect to Rod." I think the point was that we were talking about people who were choosing to, Dolly Parton, at Glastonbury to mime, and I'm sure Sir Rod will not be doing that.
He will not, he will not. And you think then of people like Welsh singer, name's Tom Jones, well, name completely escaped me, fantastic vocals.
Yes.
And also, Sir Rod, 79,
yes.
who's the oldest person to ever perform at Glastonbury on the main stage?
Don't know.
Burt Bacharach,
Oh,
87.
Really?
Macca was 80.
Yeah.
So like, there's now a history.
Elton's in his
Elton
70s.
was in his 70s, but
Yeah.
Burt and then Paul McCartney were the two oldest, and now joining the legends.
Yeah.
Sir Rod sounded great on that.
Yeah, apparently he watches us every morning. Good morning, Sir Rod.
Good morning, Sir Rod.
Yeah,
She
thanks.
bowed. I don't quite know what you do. I feel as though I need to.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay, come back next hour.
Yeah, let's have a look at what's happening as far as the newspapers are concerned for you this morning. The Guardian is leading on the US President Joe Biden, announcing that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon will come into effect, and in fact has come into effect, at 2 o'clock this morning, London time. The Financial Times carries a warning from Mexico, Canada and China outlining damage to the US in the event of Donald Trump's announced tariffs. Will he go ahead with them? I lost my faith in the world. The dance class teacher injured while protecting children during the Southport stabbing speaks for the first time on the front of the Metro, and the Telegraph reporting that the government may water down rules around electrical vehicles following warnings from car makers about the future of the industry. Let's put that to the shadow chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride, who's with us this morning. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So Labour are in government now, but the plans to have 2035 as the last time that you could buy a petrol or diesel vehicle, those were your rules, and they're costing jobs.
Yes, so I think the government is right to look at this, because clearly, as we have always argued as a party, when it comes to things net zero, you need a balance. You need a balance between incentivising producers to do things that are right for the climate, incentivising consumers to likewise do the right things, but you can't do it at the expense ultimately of jobs, which is a situation that I think we're seeing here, or indeed undue pressure on cost of living and living standards for consumers. So I think what the government needs to do is to look at these targets and look particularly at the penalties associated with those targets, so that the right balance is struck.
Why didn't you factor that in when you came up
So
with
there are,
that?
well, there are a number of things that impinge upon the current situation. Part of it actually is the demand for new cars, which has been very soft in the UK. So I don't think it's all down to the precise targets and
Because you didn't
arrangements.
put enough infrastructure in place when you
Well, we rolled out many thousands of charging points up and down the country and had a clear plan for doing so. That is an ongoing process. I think
always
it's fair
has
to
to
say.
be work.
I think it's fair to say that there's a particular challenge within towns and cities where people don't have driveways and can't put in their own charging points. So there are particular problems associated with that. But that is certainly a programme that we were full throttle on when we were in power, but are now things that are clearly the responsibility of the current government.
Do you acknowledge that we are not in a position to be able to meet these targets, and we will not be net zero as far as it comes to vehicles, electric vehicles, by 2035, as you had hoped?
So, well, that remains to be seen. What I think is important is that we get the right balance. Well, I think the government should review, and indeed has said that it will be, the targets and particularly the penalties around those targets so that we get that balance right. We are on a journey in a number of areas of the economy as we decarbonise, including electricity production, for example. And I think it's important that government changes its position as it goes along, where things change and where particular challenges arise. And that's why I think actually the government in this, well, because if you don't set targets, we have met targets in the past. In fact, if you look, you look at the carbon budgets, for example, which are set out.
No, we're talking about electric vehicles. Why have you set targets for
Climate
electric
Change
vehicles?
Committee overseas, we have actually, and when we were in government, we did actually hit those targets, and in some cases substantially exceed those targets. One of those carbon budgets, I think we exceeded by 14%.
Talking about electric vehicles.
So we've done well. Back to electric vehicles, as I say,
It's cost the industry £6 billion this year.
So that's why. It's exactly why. It needs to be looked at, and you need to get
You were in
that
charge
balance.
for the first
Well, we
6 months
actually
of the
did make a
country.
change. We did actually put the point at which 100% phase-out should occur. We actually put back to 2035.
Yes, you did.
This government has now brought it back forward to 2030. So I think we'd already signalled that actually there was change that was required to get that balance right. And we were doing similar things with the requirement to not have gas boilers, for example, and putting in ground source heat pumps, so that we got that balance right between, on the one hand, making sure that we push towards net zero, which we were the government and the first country to commit to, but at the same time get the balance right. But the balance right, Kay, when it comes to cost of living issues, and in this case, undue pressure on producers.
How absurd is it that these companies that, you know, we have so many thousands, many thousands of jobs. We've seen what Ford have done. We've seen what Vauxhall are planning to do. And in order to try to meet these targets that you guys set, they have to consider buying vouchers, if you will, from countries like China and America, who can sell all of their electric vehicles, basically giving money to their rivals in order to try to keep your targets.
So there are different ways in which you can incentivise low carbon, and one of them is by selling your capacity or your right to produce carbon to somebody else if you exceed the targets that have been imposed upon you. And that's a sort of market mechanism that I think overall is actually useful. But can I make a broader point here, which is you mentioned jobs, and jobs are really important. Yeah. When we were in government, we had almost the highest level of employment in our history, had very low level of unemployment. We've just seen a budget from a government that has ramped up taxes, particularly £25 billion worth on jobs through national insurance tax increases, which is going to slow the economy, increase unemployment, it's going to feed through to lower wages, and it's also going to drive, along with those spending plans, higher inflation, which means higher interest rates. Those are the wrong choices, and I'm afraid that is the bigger picture.
And to that end, you want to have a vote in the House of Commons. May I remind you that you only have 121 MPs. You've got no chance.
Well, that's the nature of democracy. If you have a majority of one, then you tend to win, and we're a long way behind.
Significantly more than that.
Well, yes. So I think if your question is, do you think that your amendment will prevail in the vote this afternoon or this evening?
It's a waste of time.
I think it's no. It's important that we are an effective opposition to this government. So we will call them out.
Seats to be that.
We will call them out when they go to the British electorate and they say, "Trust us. We will not be putting your taxes up left, right, and centre." And then within weeks of coming into office, they turn around and say, actually, we're going to be putting national insurance up through the roof, putting VAT on schools, we're going to introduce a farm tax to farmers that they said they would never do. They were very specific.
And we've held them to account.
We're going to scrap, we're going to means test winter fuel payments, something they told 10 million elderly people in our country they were not going to do. When they do things like that, fail to grasp and grip welfare, for example, where they've made some announcements yesterday that really don't amount to anything. They need to fundamentally...
I want to ask you about welfare. I've seen you being quoted as saying that people who potentially have mental health challenges, you said, not sure about that, some of them can just be a bit bluesy.
No, what I meant by that is I always, when I talk about mental health, I say that there are definitely people who have serious mental health challenges, and it's right that as a compassionate society, we do the right thing in supporting them. It also has to be recognised, I think, that there are people that struggle a bit with mental health issues and feeling a bit depressed and so on, for whom work is an important part of recovery.
Who decides?
And we owe it. Well, ultimately, if you're referring to those incapacity benefits or long-term sickness disability benefits, there's something called a work capability assessment.
But who decides whether somebody's got a mental health challenge or is just a bit, in your words, bluesy?
It comes down to an assessment. Somebody has to make that assessment, and that's being done through something called the work capability assessments, which is something that I reformed in government. The OBR, the independent OBR, says that will lead to 440,000 more people leaving those benefits and going on the journey towards work. And I think that's really important. And it also had a saving of about £3 billion. Now, we went into the last election with a plan for £12 billion worth of savings in the welfare budget. Some of those budgets are spiralling out of control. This government has said nothing about what it will do. Had it grasped that nettle, it would not be having to turn around to businesses today who are saying they're going to be laying people off left, right and centre if it had taken those tough choices around welfare. And it's simply not doing that. And that's wrong.
Because they're a more compassionate government than you.
No, look, compassion is about somebody who is in the right place given their condition. So if we are to afford to look after those who are in deep need, then we need to have the resources to do that. But for many people, and 20% of those, for example, on long-term sickness and disability benefits, tell us that they want to work. We have a duty to help those people and incentivise them into work rather than being stuck on benefits for years and years.
What do you make of this petition for another election, because we didn't get what we voted for? Have you signed it?
No, I haven't signed it. It's not going to lead to an early general election, unfortunately. But I think it's
a bit like your vote later on.
It's indicative, but it's indicative of something, which is that this government has had the shortest honeymoon of probably any government ever elected in our history. And there's a very good reason for that, and I'll give you two reasons. The first one is they deceived the electorate when it came to the general election. They said they would not go out, splurge lots of cash, tax everybody up to the hilt, and they did exactly that. We've seen that with farmers, with pensioners.
£20 billion black hole.
And businesses, and that's been debunked by the Office for Budget Responsibility, who have looked into that and have said that the fiscal pressure in year was under half that amount. They also say that had there at that time been discussions between Treasury officials and themselves, that number may have come down still further. And it's quite normal for governments in office to actually manage down those kind of pressures in year. So I'm afraid that is a complete red herring. It was a smokescreen to cover up for the fact this government always intended to do what it has done. And it is jaw-dropping, the level of £40 billion of tax increases. That's huge. It's almost like back to the early 90s, the 1970s, etc. And it is pensioners and farmers and the elderly and those with jobs and businesses that are paying the price.
Are you a fan of Christmas hits?
I used to like bands like, was it Slade or Mud, or who were the ones that had the great... They're the ones that always get me. They're the ones that get me out of my armchair, Kay, when it's Christmas, you know.
Apparently Noddy Holder still gets £250,000 a year in royalties for that song.
He deserves every penny, in my opinion, for the joy over
Did you know
the
it was the 40th anniversary of Last Christmas?
I didn't.
Did you not?
Time goes by so quickly.
Yeah, we're going to play it for you. It's good of you to come in. Thank you very much
pleasure.
indeed.
Lovely to see you.
As it is you. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Should politicians do God? That's our debate with former Downing Street spokesperson Alistair Campbell and Cabinet Minister turned priest Jonathan Aitken. And we speak to a seasoned storm chaser as Storm Connell sweeps across the south of the country. Plus, just for the Shadow Minister.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day...
Like it?
I do, I love it. It's great. Thank you very much. You cheered me up. After a tough interview, you made me feel very happy.
We'll be talking to the guy behind the video coming up.
Thank you.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News Wednesday morning. Coming up, discussing whether religion and politics should mix with Jonathan Aitken. Good to see you. Yasmin Alabai-Brown, and also Alistair Campbell will be with us, who famously said, "We don't do God." Let's see what he thinks now. All of that to come.
Before, though, let's bring you our top stories this morning. A ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah has begun. The deal came into effect at 4 a.m. local time in Lebanon after being approved by Israel's Security Cabinet last night. The government has announced an urgent review of its policy on electric cars after the industry blames sales quotas for Vauxhall's potential decision to close its Luton factory. The Government Minister Stephen Morgan told us this morning that his colleague Jonathan Reynolds will make a statement to MPs with more details about the review later today. The FA are investigating allegations that the referee David Coote discussed giving a yellow card before a match. Mr Coote already suspended over allegations of a rant against the then Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp. And the daughter of a post office victim who was investigated while she was terminally ill with cancer says it's time Fujitsu took responsibility for compensation. A campaign group wants the company to offer financial redress and to help establish a family fund.
So the big question for you this morning is, does religion belong in politics? Talking to Jonathan and Yasmin in just a few moments' time. Alistair Campbell with us before that, though, who famously previously said, "We don't do God." Good morning to you, Alistair. Do you do God now?
No, I'm an atheist, but I describe myself as a pro-faith atheist. That "we don't do God" statement that I made has been much quoted, but I think also much misunderstood. The point I was trying to make was that I think that in UK politics, the public are very suspicious of politicians who try to ally their faith to their politics. Whereas in America, and we see this with I'm sort of utterly baffled by the extent to which Christian evangelicals seem to have swung behind somebody who strikes me as being deeply unchristian in Donald Trump. So it's really a question about the extent to which politicians should put religion and faith at the heart of their politics. Now, it's a very, very personal choice. I understand why some people might want to do it, but I think the British public just are a little bit more suspicious of it than maybe a lot of Americans are. And I think in this debate on assisted dying, I've noticed that a lot of the people who are coming at it from a very what they would describe as a very Christian perspective, actually are trying to kind of separate their own faith out from the political issues at the heart of it.
But should they? That's the question, isn't it? It's certainly caused quite a heated debate between the Justice Secretary and Lord Falconer.
Yeah, and I see that. And look, I think when you have something like this, the reason why it's a free vote is because there is something deep in people's conscience that's at heart here, that's at the heart of the debate, and that people really, really feel deeply about it. I think people should be entitled to express their views on the issue in any way that they want. But I just think that once you start to say this is a matter of my faith, then I think that sometimes the issues at the heart of the debate are in danger of being lost.
And just before I let you go, do you have a view on the debate and the private members' bill?
Well, on the podcast I do with Rory Stewart, we've got Kim Leadbeater on this week as our guest on our leading channel, and I'm very much in favour of it. Rory Stewart, as it happens, is against it and sets out the reasons. But look, I think it's one of those where the more you go into it, the more you can see that there are very, very strong arguments on both sides. But I strongly support what Kim Leadbeater is trying to do.
Are you doing your podcast in Oslo?
I'm not. Well, yes, I did. We did the podcast yesterday. I was in Oslo, but that, the great thing about technology is we're showing now, okay, you can be anywhere to do it. But yeah, I'm not in Oslo for the podcast, but I did do the podcast from Oslo. Yeah.
Glad you cleared that up for me. It's good to talk to you as always, Alistair. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's bring in Reverend Jonathan Aitken and Yasmin Alabaya. Brian, hello to you both.
Hi.
Should religion play a role in politics?
No.
Why not?
Absolutely not. And absolutely not, because politics co-opting God and faith always ends with an overreaching power, arrogance. I mean, we saw it. It's interesting with Alistair Campbell talking the way he was. I remember how Blair and Bush co-opted Christianity when we went to war. They saw it in part as a faith battle of good and evil. I mean, it's terrible. And some of the worst states in the world today, and America is becoming one of them, but look at Saudi Arabia, look at Iran. Look what happens when politics co-opts God and becomes all-powerful.
I think it's a bit harsh to say that poor old God should be completely excluded from any consideration in the debate on assisted dying. The debate, of course, goes much wider than anybody's religious views. And MPs who are going to vote on Friday, I hope they'll go back to the great statement by Edmund Burke about what an MP should be. He should offer his constituents his or her judgment. Now, judgment is a rope with many strands in it, but the idea you should exclude anybody with religious views, I fundamentally disagree with Lord Falconer, who seems to have made some very haughty and censoring remarks about Shabana Mahmood's view that the views of her from her Islamic faith should be counted. Why not should they be counted? There are many other things. She herself said she was also taking into account political views and social views. But the idea that you should not, in a huge debate like this, consider spiritual views, religious views, it's a part of the judgment process. And just saying we're not going to bother about anybody's religious views is an extremely censorious view, and I'm surprised Alibi is getting into this...
Alibi Brown.
Alibi Brown, excuse me, is getting into this degree of censorship.
It's not censorship. It's religion has a place in society. I pray, I'm religious, I have faith, but I do not want religion to come into politics and be co-opted. I mean, I'm very interested in all the religious leaders in this country, or a group of them, come together to oppose this law. Where are they when we're selling arms all over the world and people are being massacred? Why don't they come out then? This takes me back to the abortion debate. I'm old enough to remember the same debates and the way religion was used and misused to guilt trip and try and stop a human right, which is essentially, as Kim Leadbeater has said repeatedly, about bodily autonomy, my life, my choice.
Well, now, hang on. I was there taking part in the abortion debates as a young member of Parliament, just as I was, as a young member of Parliament, taking part in death penalty debates. And in the course of those debates, which ranged over a huge scope of views and sources of views, yes, there were religious views mentioned. They weren't, in the end of the day, all that important. And I suspect that neither the views of Christians nor the views of Muslims are going to be all that important. But they are an element. And saying, no, it shouldn't be mentioned at all, we're going to censor it completely.
I never said it shouldn't be mentioned. I said God should not be co-opted in what is a political debate and a political judgment and a political decision. That's what I said. I didn't say you can mention God all you want. But I think because there's influence, 2/3 of the population wants this, supports this law.
I'm not sure that's true.
I read it this week.
Okay.
60
the latest poll yesterday of 5,000 people suggested that when people initially were very much in favour of it, but when they were given more information, that reduced down to 11% when they got the details.
Well, I've read a
of the
different
bill.
statistics.
There we go. That's statistics lie. There we go.
But I just think my argument is not that we, I do think there should be no bishops and rabbis and imams in the Lords, but that's a different issue because they shouldn't be part of the lawmaking machinery at all. But I am saying that they can exert a frightful influence on people who are made to fear, actually, that if they believe this is a right they support and religion is thrown into it, they begin to fear if they are people of faith.
Well, all this about a frightful influence, you make it sound as hobgoblins and foul fiends. Yeah. These are sort of fairly harmless figures. And let's just concentrate on Shabana Mahmood, who I think she's been quite wrongly criticised for inserting her religious faith as an element in what I call the rope of judgment, which has many, many strands in it. And we can't just exclude all people's religious views because they do affect...
But she says, as a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, I oppose it. So she can't use that. That's what I'm saying. You can't just say, as a Muslim, I say this, and by implication, most Muslims agree with it. Many of us don't.
Let me put this to you, though, if I may, please, Yasmin. If an MP represents a constituency, and those constituents are devout, one way or another, isn't it their duty to represent that view in Parliament, as opposed to their own personal view?
No,
That's what
because we
for,
have a representative democracy, thank God. And sometimes it doesn't function as one, because there's too much attention, I think, often paid by parties and MPs to what constituents are thinking. The good thing about our system is, once you're in Parliament, you make independent judgments that are good for the total population and good for the country. And I think that's a really...
constituents, no?
No, because then we'd never make any laws. We wouldn't be able to.
Well, nobody, who's got any sense, ignores completely the views of their constituents. But get back to Edmund Burke, who really was the classic voice on this subject, and he said, a representative in Parliament owes not just his industry, not just the opinions of his voters, he or she owes their own judgment.
Yes.
And so what's wrong with that? And once you say, no, we shouldn't have his judgment or her judgment, you're getting into the realm of censorship, which you won't admit you're in.
My problem with Shabana Mahmood was that she was implying this was the Muslim view. I was at a really interesting, I was at a really interesting meeting last night, talking to young Muslims. Okay, and at least half of them are for the law. So I don't think any of us, and I cannot say I speak for Muslims because I'm a Muslim, and that was what was wrong with what she said.
How would you vote if you were voting now, Jonathan?
I'm quite sympathetic to the principles behind the bill, but actually I would not vote for this bill for a whole number of rather technical reasons to do with being a legislator. This is an unsatisfactory bill, and despite all the good words Kim Leadbeater is saying about it, it's being introduced under the private members' bill procedure, which actually limits the scrutiny very severely. If it was proper national bill, it would have far more time, and it needs a lot more
Although
parliamentary.
Harriet Harman did say, to be fair, she said it would get as much time as it needed.
Well, I hope so.
Would that change your view?
No, because there are a lot of other things which need to be cleared up. For example, the position of the judges, who seem to be extremely queasy from what I've heard about the role they've been given in the bill. And I could
have to go to a judge with having two doctors said that you are almost at end of life, and then a judge would have to confirm that.
I heard the Lord Chief Justice, or formerly, saying the trouble is, what kind of evidence is a judge is supposed to be considering? I mean, there are a lot of technical flaws. We used to do parliamentary scrutiny very well in this country, before the age of guillotines and shortened debates. But a big subject like this, like abortion, had masses and masses of parliamentary time, and I'm just not afraid, at all happy with what I think are so many loose ends in this bill.
I just think the focus on process, as Kim Leadbeater herself said, is a way of doing what this Parliament has done over and over again to terminally ill people, fail them. Each time this comes to Parliament, we get into A, the process, and B, these kind of strange arguments about relatives, you know, casting relatives in this awful light as if they just want the house and the money. So many relatives. A friend of mine who doesn't live in this country 3 weeks ago took her husband and who wanted to die, made it very clear, decided early enough so he could say he wanted to die. It happened. She's in total turmoil. But she did what she felt she had to do. So I really object to the fact that relatives are being cast as these demons in this debate as well.
Well, legislators are supposed to be professional lawmakers and to take all these things into account, including religious views, but certainly judicial views, certainly political and parliamentary, and their constituents. And we still have actually a rather good parliamentary system. And hammering this out into good laws, bad laws can be made by inadequate scrutiny. And just saying the process should be disregarded is quite wrong.
Jonathan, please don't put words into my mouth. I didn't say process should be disregarded, but focusing entirely on the process and not the human lives at the centre of it. And this has failed so many people. So many people, they're starving themselves to death. They're in excruciating pain. They're killing themselves in the most horrible way. Then relatives are charged. It is a miserable affair, and Parliament, this wonderful Parliament, keeps failing them.
Okay, you started, so last word to you, Jonathan.
Well, I don't think this Parliament has failed at all. I'm actually very pleased we're having this big debate. I don't think, as drafted, the bill is right, and that seems to be quite a commonly shared view. And I think when the legislators, a lot of whom are very new, start to realise what legislative scrutiny means, without dismissing at all the views, which I think some of the principles of this bill, I'm a minister of religion, but I'm quite supportive of the whole principle. But I think this bill should be voted down.
Interesting debate. Thank you both very much indeed for coming on. Thank you. Appreciate it. And to Alistair Campbell as well, of course. Still to come on the breakfast programme for you here on Sky News. The third storm of the season is upon us now. London and the South East particularly. We'll speak to a storm chaser about how bad things could get.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Maitai village on the front line.
Firing the civilian and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. We have succumbed. She's been banging on about Christmas. We've not let her have a tree, but we've let her choose her favourite Christmas song.
Yes, it's Whitney Houston, obviously. Emmanuel, it's the best.
Let's listen.
Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel.
Beautiful. Lovely. Is that the Rockefeller Centre as well? Looks like it, doesn't it, with the Rockefeller tree. Sabby, yours?
Well, I have a bit of a cop-out answer, but Michael Bublé covers of all Christmas songs are a favourite of mine. But it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Has to be a favourite.
Oh, we've got a Michael Bublé one for you.
Ooh, let's listen.
There you go.
Everywhere you go, take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again with candy canes.
What does that mean?
What?
Take a look at the 5 and 10.
I don't question the lyrics too much. I just enjoy.
It's an American thing.
Woolworths was 5 cents and 10 cents, wasn't it? But it's obviously not that. Glistening once again. 5 and 10 glistening.
We're going to have to Google that.
If you know, will you let us know, please? We'll put this on Twitter and then you can let us know. We're going to do yours last because it's silly. Here's mine.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
And if not that one, then this one. Honestly, it's going to be worth it. Here it comes.
Santa baby,
told you.
Slip a sable under the tree for me. Been an awful good girl, Santa baby. So hurry down the chimney tonight.
Eartha Kitt, glorious, goes on to say that she quite liked the keys to a very nice car and also a platinum mine as well, which would be nice, wouldn't it?
Can't go wrong.
I've been so good, I want all of those things. Apart from the fare, obviously, I don't want the fare, but the other stuff, that would be good. Do you like this one?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous song, and it's so, I think it's the way to get you in the mood, like a nice little mince pie, a nice little brandy.
Yeah, mulled wine.
Yes.
On the wood burner.
There you go.
Yeah, we're in the mood, aren't we? We're in the mood. I mean, not even looking in his
You
direction.
are talking as long as you possibly can. But I will say, all of the classics are by far the best Christmas songs. There's none of the modern songs are a patch on anything like that at all.
Not.
And none of them are a patch on the Pogues.
Oh, stop. Here we go.
Very television. And Big Boss Andrew agrees with me. And also, actually, Shane McGowan's funeral, when they played this in the church, was absolutely remarkable. And if I can have people dancing in the aisles at my funeral, I'll be thrilled. Maybe not to this, but it was an incredible performance. But you know, everything else so saccharine and sweet and lovely about Christmas.
We had to
give me some grunge.
These lyrics.
I know, and as a homosexual man, I should be deeply offended by one of them, but whatever. It's at Christmas, it brings us together somehow.
Yeah, I think it was referring to a food product.
Yes,
anyway.
indeed.
Yeah. But the reason we're talking about them, not least because we want you to be happy, but also because we've got somebody on the programme in the next hour that was responsible. I'm just going to tell you which song it is, and then Natasha will know which one to play. It is Wham. Here we go.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
Love it.
40 years since this came out,
Yeah, can you
which is remarkable.
It's amazing. To be fair, I think it's probably one of the best Christmas music videos. Because there's
glad you said that.
Well, it's such a good music video that I want to know what's happening. I want to know who they all are.
Glad you said that.
We've got the director coming on at
I know.
9:30, so it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
Who'd have thought it, eh?
Production.
Yeah, exactly. Not just thrown together. Well, actually, it is. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes with all today's top stories. Stay tuned.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Hi everybody, a very good morning to you. Coming up on the programme for you, a ceasefire begins between Israel and Hezbollah to end fighting in Lebanon.
Plus, is a U-turn coming on electric vehicles? Well, we've learned this morning that the Business Secretary will make a statement to MPs today in the House of Commons announcing an urgent review.
And we'll be looking at some of the year's most spectacular wildlife photography.
All of that to come Wednesday, 27th of November.
We're waking up to the first peaceful morning across the Israel-Lebanon border in more than a year as a delicate ceasefire takes effect.
More than 1 million people in Lebanon were forced to flee their homes. Some of them are already on their way home. Also ahead, Vauxhall plans to close its Luton factory after 120 years, blaming rules on electric vehicles. A government minister agrees that change is needed.
In my own constituency, half of the charging points currently aren't working. So there is a journey that we need to take. Absolutely right, and I've been calling out the council for that.
A report on the fight for justice for the children of postmasters wrongfully convicted in the Horizon IT scandal. Referee at the centre of an FA betting probe after allegations he discussed giving a player a yellow card before a game.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
And Last Christmas turns 40, speaking to the director of the video and discussing our favourite festive hits. Morning everyone, 2 o'clock here in the UK, 4 o'clock in Israel this morning, and a ceasefire began between Israel and Hezbollah. As dawn broke, people who have been displaced by months of Israeli attacks were already beginning to return home, despite a warning that it's not yet safe for them to do so. And the IDF said in the last hour that it had fired on vehicles entering a restricted area. The deal, which was announced by the US President Joe Biden, is meant to be permanent. Hezbollah is expected to move its forces north of the Litani River. And over the next 60 days, the Israel Defense Forces all withdraw from southern Lebanon, or at least that's the plan. The Lebanese army expected to deploy 5,000 troops to replace them, policing a buffer zone alongside UN peacekeepers. Alex Rossi reports.
Clear skies across the Lebanese capital this morning. After months of fighting, Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to a ceasefire. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation after presenting the deal to his cabinet, but warned he'd be quick to act if Hezbollah failed to keep up their side of the bargain.
In full understanding with the United States, we maintain full military freedom of action. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and tries to arm itself, we will attack. If it tries to renew terrorist infrastructure near the border, we will attack.
Just minutes before the ceasefire came into place, Israel launched more airstrikes on Beirut. At least 42 people have been killed in the last 24 hours. In Lebanon, more than 1 million people have been forced from their homes. Some are now returning, but they're making their way back home to devastation. Their villages and towns have been destroyed. It will take years to rebuild.
The cost of this war has been very high. The amount of destruction, the death toll, the total freeze of the economy, and the wave of displaced people in 2006, we have not seen that.
Israel invaded southern Lebanon on the 1st of October this year. Just yesterday, Israeli soldiers crossed the Litani River, many kilometers deep inside the country. Around 60,000 Israelis have been displaced from their homes along the border for more than a year. Many of them don't believe it is safe to return yet and oppose the ceasefire.
Everyone, including myself, are afraid that Hezbollah will recover, are afraid that nobody will implement the agreement except for Israel.
On the streets of Beirut, people celebrated the prospect of peace after months of war. But this is a fragile ceasefire, and by no means the end of the wider conflict across the region. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Emergency statement in the House of Commons today?
Yes, the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, is going to be making that statement, and that's because last night he announced a review into the electric vehicles targets that are placed on manufacturers after Vauxhall and the parent company of Vauxhall announced that they are potentially going to have to close down a plant that's going to risk over 1,000 jobs here in the UK because of those EV targets. So let's just talk viewers through exactly what's happening in terms of how we got here. Okay. So over the past 10 years, we've actually seen several manufacturers having to shut down here in the UK. Now, when the Conservatives were in power, they set targets to try and get electric vehicles essentially kind of pushed into supply by penalising manufacturers, fining manufacturers if they didn't meet certain targets. Okay. They then ended up having to roll back on that slightly when Kay Burley was the Business Secretary because the manufacturer said it's not going to happen, we're going to have to get rid of jobs. Now the Labour have come into power, something slightly similar is happening, which is what we saw from the Vauxhall announcement yesterday. We've also had Ford last week cutting 800 jobs, and they are directly saying this is linked to these targets and also a lack of demand for electric vehicles here in the UK. Nissan is also talking about potential issues with their plant up in Sunderland as well. Northeast. So that's the background to this. Now, Jonathan Reynolds last night, when he announced this review, he also said this is not about undermining or doubting the transition itself. So they are sticking to those targets in terms of 2030, 2035 for electric vehicles. But what they're saying is they want to hear from the industry. Now, the difficulty with that is industry are saying, unless you change the targets or unless you reduce those fines, we are not going to be able to do this. Now, Stephen Morgan was speaking to you earlier in the programme, wasn't he, about this? And you were asking him, really, how is government going to save these jobs and try and fix some of the issues with the electric vehicles industry?
It's really important that there is the infrastructure up and down the country. In my own constituency, half of the charging points currently aren't working. So there is a journey that we need to take. Absolutely right. And I've been calling out the council for that. And it's absolutely right that we've got the right infrastructure in place to make this suitable journey and an easier journey for motorists to move towards.
What about if people don't want these cars?
Well, we've set out the ambition. We obviously need to take consumers with us, and I know that Johnny Reynolds will do a good job on this work, and he will obviously set out more detail on this later in the House.
Today?
Today.
Going to change their mind, aren't they?
They're going to have to do something. Even the minister there was really admitting something is going to have to be done. Otherwise, they're going to see all these potential mass job losses that they will be blamed for. So the question is, how do they tweak the system or change the system? Is it the targets? Is it the fines? Is it the credit system, buying credits from rivals, etc.? There's different ways they can do that. Now, the opposition are trying to say that Labour need a balance between incentivising the public and also producers, manufacturers, but also they say, Mel Stride was talking to you earlier, and he was saying that we need to look at the penalties so that we get the right balance. So it sounds like the Conservatives would rather those fees, those fines, be lowered slightly to reduce that pressure on electric vehicles manufacturers.
OK, we'll see, won't we?
Yeah.
More of that to come throughout the course of the programme. Thanks very much indeed, Mari, for now. Thank you. A developing story for you now. The third named storm of the season has just hit the UK, bringing heavy rainfall to the south. Weather expert Paul Botton joining us now from Essex. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Tell me about Storm Connell.
Yeah, we actually got away with this one. It's actually developed in the North Sea, and it's going to affect Holland and Denmark more than us. The main features for this one for us was a lot of rainfall on already saturated ground. So thankfully the Midlands, that was badly affected by Storm Burt, didn't get that, the intensity of rain that we got further south, but I think Dartmoor got 2 inches, and West Sussex and Hampshire got 1 inch. Thankfully, we're not going to get the strong winds. This was quite a fast-moving system.
But as you said, very heavy rain started late last night. It's going to carry on until midday, is it?
Yeah, the last of the rain's clearing the east coast now, and then the storm will kind of strengthen, deepen in the North Sea, and that's where the strong winds will hit Holland, and that's why the Dutch Met Office named it Connell, and our Met Office didn't name it. It wasn't strong enough for us to be affected, but they put the weather warnings out for the rain, obviously.
And what sort of problems will Storm Connell cause in the Netherlands?
But the way it's hitting the coast, obviously they're flat. They're called the Low Countries for that reason, and the wind will obviously impact the coastline there. And they've been hit by a lot of rainfall in the early autumn, like we have as well.
Yeah, a lot of the roads actually, as I know from experience, are below sea level in Amsterdam. So all sorts of problems potentially on the way there. You're a storm chaser, Paul. Why do you do it?
For me, it's actually taking people over to America to actually see some of the most incredible storms that we have on the planet. We don't like the death and destruction, obviously, but, you know, nature is an incredible force, and to show people that are really interested in that sort of thing, these storms year on year, is amazing. And thankfully we don't get those in the UK of that intensity, although we do get obviously the winter storms.
We certainly do. Thanks for explaining that to us, Paul. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Take care. Bucketing down this morning, wasn't it?
It really was.
Absolutely bucketing down.
It really was. It's eased up here, though, in London. Flooding, though, lots on the West Coast Main Line, so lots of trains out of Paddington disrupted at the moment.
Again, because Paddington's been hit by Storm Burt as well. The Minister came in this morning. He was a bit late and he looked like a drowned rat, it has to be said. No one had thought, Brolly, check the weather forecast.
Always check before you travel.
Absolutely. Quick look at what else you've got for us.
Yes, just coming up to 9:15, let's turn our attention to Egypt, because 7 people, including 2 Britons, are still missing from a tourist boat which sank in the Red Sea off the coast of Egypt. 5 more survivors were rescued yesterday and 4 bodies recovered. Egyptian military forces, which are coordinating rescue operations, have now rescued 37 of the 44 people on board. Teams say they've been intensifying efforts to find those still missing. The government has announced plans to push ahead with its rollout of free breakfast clubs in England, giving parents 30 minutes of free childcare at the start of the school day. Around 750 state schools with primary-age pupils can now apply to join the early adopter scheme, with the first clubs expected to be running from April. Casinos and betting operators will be forced to pay a levy on their profits under government plans to tackle problem gambling. The levy will bring in £100 million, with half of the money going directly to the NHS to fund the treatment and support of people with gambling addictions. Authorities in Pakistan have reopened roads to the capital, Islamabad, following days of protests from supporters of the imprisoned former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The city had been under a 4-day lockdown, which at least 7 people were killed in during violent clashes with security forces.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about the 40th anniversary of Last Christmas and the guy that actually put that video together. We're always appreciative when our audience interacts with us, and we got one of these this morning actually, in the post. It's Rod Stewart with Jules Holland. Had a look through the list. This one's my favourite.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains the pennies from heaven?
We're all jigging along to that, aren't we? There was a note that came with it. My dear Kay, I watch you every day along with millions of others. I'm a big fan. 4 albums for you and your crew as a way of thanking everybody for a lovely Glastonbury announcement this morning. With respect, Sir Rod.
From the man
himself.
So cool.
Isn't it? Good morning, Sir Rod. Thank you for joining us. We always appreciate it, don't we?
We certainly do, by a legend, of course, at Glastonbury next year.
Yes, so he's going to be on the legend stage, isn't he? And you were telling me the oldest person who's ever played there?
Burt Bacharach, 87, then Paul McCartney, 80, Rod Stewart, 79. Rod Stewart, actually, who's made a point of saying how fit he is, can still do the 100 metres in 18 seconds.
Isn't that amazing?
The world record
impressive.
at that age, 14.21, so he's not far off.
It's amazing. He obviously keeps fit for that opportunity.
Yeah.
He's played previously, hasn't he, at Glastonbury?
He did. 2002, Coldplay and Stereophonics headlined alongside.
Check out his knowledge.
I know. Well, he's just looked it up, but I mean, he knows how to...
I looked it up yesterday. I've remembered it for 24 hours.
Okay.
He's gutted that he's the one that didn't get the CD.
Exactly. Oh, no, you got one too.
Yeah.
Oh, sent for. Did you not get one?
I didn't get one. Come on,
Sort
Sir
that out.
Rod.
Oh, no, we've got 4.
Well, I'll have to take the third
find one. We'll find one for you. Talk to me about what's going on with this referee.
Sure,
He's in the headlines all the time.
Yeah, this is not the first time that we are seeing his name pop up in the papers. Very serious allegations about the referee David Coote. In the Sun newspaper today, the FA are investigating betting allegations that in 2019, he, ahead of a match, discussed with a fan giving a Leeds player a yellow card. Now, this is something he went on to do during the match and then subsequently, it's alleged, messaged this fan saying, "I hope you backed as discussed." Now, this is something he denies, well, in terms of wrongdoing. He says that these are false and defamatory claims that are being made against him, and he wholeheartedly denies any wrongdoing. Now, in a statement, the PGMOL, they're the body responsible for refereeing games in English football, have said that the facts need to be established in light of these very serious allegations. We adopt a zero-tolerance approach to any breach of our integrity code of conduct, which is signed by all match officials on an annual basis. They go on to say that their board is committed to taking the appropriate action should any breach of that code be proven. Now, Coote is already in hot water. He's suspended for viral videos that show him insulting the last Liverpool player, Jurgen Klopp, and soon after that, a video emerged of him appearing to be consuming drugs. Now, the FA have said that they are closely investigating his conduct.
And we've had a statement from him as well, haven't we, where he says he strongly refutes the false and defamatory allegations, whatever issues I may have had. He goes on to say, in the past, in my personal life, they have never affected my decision-making on the field. I've always held the integrity of the game in the highest regard, refereeing matches impartially and to the best of my ability. I'm sure that story will develop throughout the course of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you. Daughter of a post office victim who was investigated while she was terminally ill with cancer, says it's time Fujitsu took responsibility for compensation. Adele Robinson reports.
They still chose to convict a dying woman. They put her on trial internally. Well, you've done wrong, so you're going to pay the consequences, and if you die, so be it.
Katie watched her mum fight terminal cancer and the post office at the same time. Fiona Watson was forced to admit stealing from her branch in 2002. She was innocent and died months after.
We all said goodbye. And watched her go. It was really hard. I mean, what 13-year-old wants to hold their mother as she dies?
Sorry. And all this time she'd been gone after by the post office up until that point?
Yeah.
Do you think it did contribute towards her health, her declining health?
100%. I believe that they're responsible for taking away what little time we had left. Everything was overshadowed by what had happened. It's like she just gave up.
Katie's part of Lost Chances, a group set up by the children of post office victims. After this,
I think there is a moral obligation for the company to contribute.
a statement on redress from Fujitsu, the company behind Horizon Software, which saw hundreds wrongfully convicted.
I swear by Almighty God.
But despite a meeting with European Director Paul Patterson, over 3 months later, nothing's changed.
We do want to engage in that way. I'm still unclear about what things we can do other than sums of money.
A lawyer for victims says the lack of communication from Fujitsu after giving them hope's unforgivable.
Moral obligation doesn't come with a price. Either you are morally obliged to do something or you're not. And they have not followed through with that moral obligation.
It's not necessarily about redress, say campaigners, but putting right lost opportunity.
We'll never get back what we lost, but I just want them to take ownership.
And waiting on Fujitsu to step up for every victim. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, with the release of the shortlist for the Natural History Museum's Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award. We'll speak to one of the nominees.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. This year,
And Last Christmas turns 40. We'll speak to the director of the video later this hour and discuss our favourite festive hits.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Hello again, everybody. The shortlist for the Natural History Museum's Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award has been announced. Nearly 60,000 wildlife photographers and photographs have been whittled down to just 25, with voting now open for the public to choose their favourite. Photographer David Northall, whose entry made the shortlist, is with us from Minneapolis, staying up late for us. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Tell me about your photograph.
It's a pretty amazing image. It's a picture of a honey badger attacking a porcupine. And it's very strange to see these animals both out in the open during the daytime without any cover.
Absolutely. I'm just going to lose that strap there, and then we can see the picture even there we go. It looks as though the honey badgers come off worse, but of course, honey badgers are tough old things, aren't they?
They certainly are. They're one of the most ferocious of animals, and they'll take on anything many, many times their own size. In this particular case, it was attacking the porcupine from the back and attacking its right-hand rear leg, and the porcupine was backing into it as part of its defense mechanism.
Yeah, known as the Badger of Death, if anybody has watched Top Gear previously, for reasons that you either know or you don't. Tell me how you came across this picture, what happened, this scene?
Well, we were out early one morning in Botswana, and we were tracking a lion down a dusty path. The lion's footprints were just heading off into the bush, and we went round the corner of a group of trees, and we saw a commotion over on the right-hand side. The first instinct you have as a photographer is just pick up the camera and start getting shots. So the camera was already preset for doing fast action photography. In this particular case, it didn't need fast action, but that's how the camera was set up. Got some shots in the bag and then got a little bit closer to try and figure out what it was. And from around about 60 or 70 feet away, we could see this poor honey badger just looking up, very startled. As it saw us, it turned and ran away. And the porcupine shuffled off underneath a bush. And we thought that would be it. But we came back a little bit later, and that wasn't quite it.
Yeah. Tell me what made you decide that you wanted to submit the photograph, and then what happened next?
Well, it's really because it's so unusual. The guides that we had on the tour with us had never seen this in over 50 years of guiding in that area. And as we drove away, every other vehicle that we passed, we stopped them, and the guides spoke to each other, and we showed them pictures, and they were just astonished with the image. So it was obviously we had something a little bit special here. So as part of last year's submissions, I included this particular one. I think it's there because it's so unusual, not because of the photographic expertise in this particular image.
Yeah, I just needed an armadillo in there as well, didn't you? And you had a hat trick. You, as I said, you're in the short list, the final few. There's a few others that we're showing on the screen at the same time. You must have been thrilled and honoured, David, to manage to be whittled down to just the final few.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you look at the other images that are there, there's amazing photographs, all of them. So it's just great to be in this last section. It'd be great to win it, but at the end of the day, this just inspires you to do something extra. You know, the photos that I have for this year's competition are already submitted, and I'm already trying to think of what I can do next year to get into next year's competition.
What sort of things? Is it always to do with safari, or do you have other areas of expertise as well?
No, I do a lot of landscape work. Getting out into the landscapes, but that involves getting up very early in the morning to get into position, you know, before the sun comes up to get the best use of that golden hour. And then also in the evening, staying up a little bit, ready for the golden hour and the time shortly afterwards, after the sun has gone down and the light starts to shine up the sky.
Yeah, well, I think yours is best. I'm just putting that out there, although I like this mountain lion as well, but I think yours has got a very good chance. Will you let us know how you get on?
I certainly shall.
Lovely. It's good of you to take the time and stay up late for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News one more time.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
It never gets, well, actually it does get old. It's 40 years old this year. Talking to the director who made that video. What was the brief? Stay tuned and find out. All the gang are here because we are going to be talking about a song that has turned 40 this year. Before the break, I said it was the last time we were going to play it. It's not. Here it comes again.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
And with us is Andrew Morahan, director of that music video. That is 40 years old.
It is 40 years old.
Tell me the story behind it.
Well, it was, they were kind of the height of their fame, you know, trajectory at the time, and they'd done a kind of sunny video, Club Tropicana, and so they wanted to do a kind of Christmas single and do a kind of, you know, opposite of the summery thing, the winter thing. So it was decided to try and find somewhere in Europe that we could shoot this little story about the Last Christmas song.
And what is the story?
The story really is, it's like a microcosm of, you know, it's almost like a trailer for a bigger movie. You don't see, you know, any of the guys singing. So it's little kind of montages of bits that might be from a bigger story. So I think the idea was that on top of the kind of, you know, Christmas special kind of feeling, that underneath there was this kind of underbelly of kind of regret and lost love and stuff like that. And I think it kind of taps into the human condition, which is why it's lasted so long in a way.
And when you take the winter, tiny little alpine village, and then also global superstars, how's that kind of triumvirate to direct?
Yeah, well, it was one of those things where I was literally sent around Europe for, you know, a week before looking for snow. I mean, it was like October.
Was it actual snow?
That was actual snow.
And was it actually snowing?
It was actually snowing. What happened was I'd been up, you know, up on glaciers to, you know, in helicopters and stuff, couldn't find the right place. And then one of my location guys said, come to Sasfay, it's snowing. And I literally called management and the band and said, get over here now. It looks perfect. That's what we're going to do.
So, I mean, how do you guys keep warm? It sounds really, really basic. But if it's actual snow and it's really snowing, how are you supposed to direct a music video in the freezing cold?
Well, you know, for the crew, adrenaline is a big thing anyway, okay. And all the band and the people in here are all dressed up warm anyway.
Appropriately,
so. Yeah. I mean, when you're filming, you're used to you know, dressing for the occasion, as they say. But so it wasn't too bad. I don't even remember it being that cold to be fair.
It looks freezing. I have to ask you though, 4 decades on, did you really think that the hit would be as big as it is today, all this time on?
Well, we knew it was going to be a hit because they'd already had a couple of number ones and stuff like that. Didn't really see the Band-Aid thing coming.
Which kept you off the number one
Kept
spot.
you off number one. And, but George, you know, embraced both. And, you know, it was a kind of badge of honour, I think, to be beat to number one for a few years by Band-Aid. So.
Yeah, and it has been number one, though, hasn't it, for Christmas?
Yeah, weirdly enough, at 39 years, which was last year, it finally got to number one in Christmas week. So it achieved that status last year.
Fantastic. And was it the royalties from this that was given to Band-Aid, or it was the other way around?
No, George and Andrew gave their royalties to the Band-Aid.
Good lads. What was it like working with them?
Oh, well, then it was fun because literally they arrived. We roughly had the thing worked out. George and I had worked out, you know, the kind of the storyboard and stuff. So it was just a question of we shot it in 2 days, in fact 2 afternoons, because the first morning we were getting them all dressed and all that kind of stuff. So we literally was, you blink and it's done. And it's only kind of once you're in the edit and you start putting it together, you go, oh, that works quite well, that works quite well.
Probably just as well, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I never saw it as a strain to work with them. Well.
Did you do other videos with them as well?
I did, yes. Well, the first one I did was Careless Whisper with George.
Oh, loved Careless Whisper.
I did things like I'm Your Man with them and Edge of Heaven and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Careless Whisper was... Where did that idea come from?
Well, weirdly enough, George had done a video in Miami, and you know, the famous story is that his hair went all curly because of the weather out there, and he wasn't that keen on what they'd shot in America. And that's where I was brought in, and I shot the stuff in the Lyceum with him on the stage with the ropes and stuff like that. So then we put it together.
What a great video that was. What's your favourite Christmas song?
Well, I think it has to be now. I mean, I think it's one of those things, at the time when you're doing it, you think, oh, it's a Christmas thing. But if you remember back in the day, it was a badge of honour to have a Christmas #1. And I think this is definitely up there with the Pogues and stuff like that. And I think it has, huge resonance for a lot of people.
His big Pogues fan. I think it's a fantastic song. But when we think of Christmas songs, we think of all of the, with all due respect, the vintage songs, right? Things from 30, 40 years ago. Modern British Christmas songs just do not punch through. If there is a band trying to break it, if there is a band that's trying to make a music video to break that mould of having success here and now, what do they need to do? What's the missing formula?
I don't think it's missing. I mean, if you think about it in stages, in the 60s, 70s, well, major 70s and 80s, as I say, it was a badge of honour to have a Christmas #1, so there was a competitive
Still is,
thing.
probably.
But then you had the X Factor years, didn't you, where, every time somebody won, that usually it was a #1 that week. And then the charts kind of collapsed, in a sense. You've got streaming and you've got all that other stuff now, and you don't have that same, we probably all sat on Thursday night waiting for Top of the Pops to start. Doesn't happen anymore. So I think that the kind of, aura of a Christmas #1's probably gone.
Well, this is my favourite. I think it was Christmas #1, but let's have a listen.
Santa baby, just slip a sable under the tree for me.
Production has to be said with that video. But what a voice, eh?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Share yours, madam.
Mine is Whitney Houston, Emmanuel. I love
Do you like
that
this one?
song.
Do you know this one? I'd never heard it before.
I have heard it, but a long time ago.
Okay. Do you think, we'll have a look, do you think this is the Rockefeller Centre? It looks like it is to me, but the answer is I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it looks like where the skate park is.
Yeah, the statue.
Yeah, I have heard this one. So.
Have
yeah,
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. And yours, madam?
Well, for me, anything Michael Bublé touches, he turns to gold. So I'm going to have to say...
I haven't.
Yet. So I'd say my favourite Christmas song is It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, among many others, of course, that he's done. But that one, for me, when I hear it, hits the spot.
Okay, we go.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere.
Does that black and white thing work still?
Well, I think he's got such a kind of timeless voice, especially rooted in that kind of, kind of American songbook kind of thing from 30s and 40s. I just think it works for him particularly.
Okay. Yours is black and white as well, isn't it?
Nice black and white, Andrew. I'm going to make you happy because for me, it's Fairy Tale of New York.
Yes,
it's got to be.
We had to cut round it, but here it comes. Why do you like that one?
Again, in a different way, like to the Last Christmas thing, I think, one thing about all those Christmas videos or songs is they tap into the human condition, and I think we all have a perception of Christmas and what it means to us and how we feel about it. And I just think it triggers, they're triggers to the kind of the human condition, kind of emotional response.
When people know that you're the director of the Last Christmas music video, what's the question that they ask you?
Well, probably the one you asked earlier. What was it like working with Wham at the time? And it was amazing. And apart from stopping them drinking during the shoot, it was I mean, we've literally got to Switzerland, and we don't have time to find Ribena to as there are other brands available. Sorry about that. But. So literally, it was like, oh yeah, give them a couple of drinks, will be fine. As filming does, it goes on. So it got rather merry, which was fantastic. I think it adds to it.
Yeah, keeps you warm.
It adds to it. Must be challenged. Have there been moments where you've maybe not with Wham, but you head against the wall, going, I just can't cope with this situation, this artist.
Don't name
no
names.
comment.
I want names.
There've been a couple. I mean, but it's like anything, isn't it? In production, you sometimes. I once had an Italian client. This is not one music video, but on a commercial, who was crying to me to make it stop raining. And right. I don't have a god complex, and there's nothing I could do to stop it raining. But yeah, there are situations which can be very stressful. Yeah.
Do you grieve for the heyday of the pop video?
Yeah, in a way, because it was. I kind of got involved, you know, early to mid 80s, and it was when MTV Europe started. So you had MTV America. And, you know, there were big videos being done like Duran and Ultravox and, you know, Queen and people like that. And we were, you know, a bunch of fresh-faced girls and boys coming out of art college and saying, yeah, we can do that. And so it was, you know, so we were kind of making it up as we went along in a way. And so, yes, it was really exciting because it felt like you were kind of pushing the boundaries of creativity.
And what's the Christmas #1 going to be this year?
I don't know. I think this has got a good... Last Christmas got another good shot because it's the 40th anniversary. You know,
It's the 40th anniversary of Band Aid as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's already mired in a bit of controversy, isn't it? I think this has got a good shot, and we've also, you know, got some stuff up our sleeve. Like George, one of the only times he actually sung Last Christmas to a live audience at Wembley, we've recut that. So
now he tells us. Now we're finishing the interview. Fantastic. When can we see that?
It'll be out before Christmas, but it's another kind of special edition for the fans.
That would be the edition that...
I think it might help it push it over the edge, yes. I'd like to think so.
OK, one more time. One more time. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Here we go.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over $50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up, and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Mai Tai village on the front line.
Firing to civilians and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Hi again, everybody. Let's turn our attention to Elon Musk, who could be the second most powerful man in Donald Trump's White House. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has this report about his view on reproduction. She's been speaking to his dad.
is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space.
Their alliance shaped the 2024 election, a bond that has only deepened since. But how can Elon Musk's views influence Donald Trump's policy? The cause closest to his heart is pronatalism, a pro-birth ideology in which reproduction is the key goal of humanity. Musk has 11 children by 3 different women. Some have spent time with him at Trump's Florida mansion, but few understand the origin of his views better than his own father, Errol Musk.
Elon doesn't try to push his opinion across, but he will have an opinion.
Errol has 7 children himself, ranging in age from Elon at 53 to his youngest daughter, who is 5. He's also a pronatalist.
We're not here to enjoy boating or flying or, skiing or kite surfing or something. We're here to continue being here.
Elon once told a biographer, if each successive generation of smart people has fewer kids, then that's probably bad. Is he talking about eugenics there?
I wouldn't call it eugenics as such, but every nation has practiced a certain form of survival of the fittest. One need only go to England and go to Cheltenham area, the horse breeding area, and say, look, we're not going to breed the horses anymore by any form of standard. I've got a few old horses I found in Nigeria, and we're going to just mix them with your racehorses. They'll say, no.
A more sanitised version of pro-family politics took centre stage on the campaign trail.
I consider myself to be the father of fertilization.
The president-elect vowing to make in vitro fertilisation free to anyone who needs it.
We restore our embryos, we store sperm and we store oocytes.
California is the world's fertility capital.
We are busy.
I'm invited into a leading IVF clinic in LA, where they're expecting a big boost in business. Patients at this clinic can choose not only the gender of their baby, but their eye colour too. It's Silicon Valley meets family planning.
How big a part is Elon Musk going to play in the future of IVF?
Musk is a technocrat. He's an intellectual genius in multiple areas, and everything he touches seems to turn to gold. There's not much that evolves as quickly as Musk's technology, but IVF has done that, and I think he's going to find that very attractive.
Musk has invested millions in fertility research, but he's navigating his own complicated family life. In the hills outside Austin, Texas, there are rumours he's bought a compound to house some of his children and their mothers together. Musk denies this is true, but soon he could be helping to design family policy across this country. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
To the religion in politics debate now, which has come to the fore ahead of the assisted dying bill vote. Former number 10 spin doctor Alistair Campbell once said, "We don't do God." Earlier, I asked him if he does God now.
No, I'm an atheist, but I describe myself as a pro-faith atheist. That "we don't do God" statement that I made has been much quoted, but I think also much misunderstood. The point I was trying to make was that I think that in UK politics, the public are very suspicious of politicians who try to ally their faith to their politics. Whereas in America, and we see this with I'm sort of utterly baffled by the extent to which Christian evangelicals seem to have swung behind somebody who strikes me as being deeply unchristian in Donald Trump. So it's really a question about the extent to which politicians should put religion and faith at the heart of their politics. Now, it's a very, very personal choice. I understand why some people might want to do it, but I think the British public just are a little bit more suspicious of it than maybe a lot of Americans are. And I think in this debate on assisted dying, I've noticed that a lot of the people who are coming at it from a very what they would describe as a very Christian perspective, actually are trying to kind of separate their own faith out from the political issues at the heart of it.
But should they? That's the question, isn't it? It's certainly caused quite a heated debate between the Justice Secretary and Lord Falconer.
Yeah, and I see that. And look, I think when you have something like this, the reason why it's a free vote is because there is something deep in people's conscience that's at heart here. That's at the heart of the debate, and that people really, really feel deeply about it. I think people should be entitled to express their views on the issue in any way that they want. But I just think that once you start to say this is a matter of my faith, then I think that sometimes the issues at the heart of the debate are in danger of being lost.
And just before I let you go, do you have a view on the debate and the private members' bill?
Well, on the podcast I do with Rory Stewart, we've got Kim Leadbeater on this week as our guest on our leading channel, and I'm very much in favour of it. Rory Stewart, as it happens, is against it and sets out the reasons. But look, I think it's one of those where the more you go into it, the more you can see that there are very, very strong arguments on both sides. But I strongly support what Kim Leadbeater is trying to do.
He was in Oslo, where he had filmed his podcast. He'd sorted the lighting out there, hadn't he? Natural lighting. Clever. Clever. The vote is when?
Friday. The vote is Friday, so we'll find out whether that goes on to the next stage in the parliamentary process or whether it has been killed in the water. The interesting thing about the assisted dying bill is actually those who are still undecided are really quite a large proportion of MPs. So we really can't tell how it's going to go yet. However, if there are still a large number of those who still don't know by now, one might argue that perhaps they will err on the side of caution if they can't make up their minds. But we'll just have to see whether they're... we know that a lot of people are getting messages from constituents especially who are very, very passionate about this and really want to see MPs represent their interests, which is what they are there to do, which is why it's so interesting about that debate around religion. Are you there to focus on your religion, or are you there to represent the people who put you there?
Interestingly, Yasmin Alabayo, who was part of that debate, was saying that there's a huge swathe of people who are in favour. That's not, the research I've been doing, that's not necessarily the case. When people see what's in the bill, the proposed bill, then they get a little bit squeamish, and that reverts to 11% of people in favour. It's what I've read.
Yeah, so the polling on this is quite scattered. And this is why I think the fact that people haven't read the detail of the bill means that can you trust all of the polling when people haven't been given the details? And then when they are given the details, clearly people are a bit more reticent. I think that does show that there is more to be had in terms of a public discussion, a public debate about this, because there's one thing to be in favour of it as a kind of arbitrary principle in a philosophical way. There's another thing to be in favour of this specific type of legislation and exactly what safeguards are and are not there, how it's administered, and all those kinds of detail. That's a very different question, isn't it?
Another challenge for the government is electric vehicles.
Yes, and we're going to have a statement from Jonathan Reynolds. It's expected maybe after PMQs, 12:30 or so, depending on the couple of statements maybe that slot in before it, but around 12:30, 1 o'clock. Business Secretary, with regards to this situation that has been highlighted after Vauxhall saying it's going to close potentially its plant in Luton, 1,100 jobs are at risk. And this is because there's this government mandate, as you said, to West Streeting that started under the Conservatives, the previous government, that says that 22%... Mel Stride, yes.
It's easy to mix them up.
It is easy to mix them up. That 22% of manufacturers' car sales need to be electric vehicles, and if they don't, for every car underneath that threshold, it's a £1,500 payment that they have to make. And what they can do is go and buy credits from other firms. Well, who are the other firms? Tesla, Chinese manufacturers, who don't manufacture anything here in the UK. And so UK manufacturers, based manufacturers, are saying, well, look, this system, which is only going to get bigger, we're only going to have to hit higher and higher and higher targets, is
Cost them $6 billion this year.
It's really expensive. It's benefiting companies outside of the country. We're going to have to start closing plants. And so now the government racing to do a consultation to see what they can maybe do to try and change the situation.
Yeah, but it's disingenuous, as you said, disingenuous for the opposition to say it's a problem with this government, because it was their policy.
It was their policy, and it was their policy they ended up having to row back on when Kemi Badenoch was the business secretary. So they know exactly these kinds of problems, and they've dealt with them, and then they've ended up having to row back. So they know exactly what's going on here.
I promise you can have a tree next week.
Yay! Come on, I've got to get to the festive spirit.
It's close. Yeah, it's so close. Can you believe it's December next week? PMQs later. We'll see you tomorrow.
We arrive. a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future.